Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Wizard and Glass Part 13.
Lucky 13?
Yeah, and I was just, I don't know, maybe having a beverage or so the other night and thinking it through, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're doing around 2% per episode. That means there'll be 50 episodes for this?
I think the math checks out.
I mean, we do know there's going to be like the stuff at the end that will actually cut that percentage down.
Yeah.
But still, that means that
the Kindle version is funny because
it'll have like the preview for the next book, and there'll be like the postscript that King puts in, which I don't think we have to cover because I think he did one postscript that was in. No, it wasn't this book though. It was the 5th, 6th, and 7th book.
Yeah.
All have the same outro. So this one we might have to cover just to see like.
What's going on,
what it is.
Yeah.
But overall, the percentages probably aren't 100% accurate. But either way, that still means that we're going to be going into the 40s probably for this
at
book
least.
club. So
who knows if we draw any out? Or
yeah, that's true.
There's a lot in this. So.
That is true. But I was just doing a little bit of buzzed math, and I was like, oh my god, we might do 50 episodes on this book.
Yeah,
and this isn't the longest book of the series. Oh man, hello Baraki, welcome to the live chat. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. Hit the intro, and we'll jump right into part 13.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, as well as the extended Stephen King universe, because, of course, all things serve the tower. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for book club. We are doing the book club series through Wizard and Glass currently. We are currently on number 13. That is today's episode. And we were just discussing, just before we went on air, there is a good possibility that we're probably going to at least go up over 40 for this series, which I guess follows. I guess we're just because we generally shoot for about 2% per episode.
Yeah.
That fills up usually a 2-hour episode of discussions, which means there'd be 50 episodes. But of course, there's a lot of Kindle shenanigans, so probably cut that down and say 40 is a good estimate, which is crazy.
Somewhere 40 plus, somewhere above 40.
Yeah, so that's wild. But let's go ahead and dive on in. There's no need for a spoiler warning. This is a book club. We will have a spoiler section at the very end, but you will be warned both audibly and visually if you're here on the YouTube side. But that was at the very, very end of the episode. Generally speaking, I'd say 95% of these episodes are spoiler-free. We stay where we're at or before. We don't jump ahead. You won't hear us dropping some crazy Book 7 spoiler like right now. That wouldn't happen. Now, in a roundtable, all bets are off. But in the book clubs, that shouldn't happen.
It's happened in the intro before on roundtables. So
yes, exactly. Then if you want to find us, you can find us on Apple Podcasting, stream us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, or any podcasting service of your choice. If you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, we'd appreciate that. Then if you want to join the live streams, as I know we at least have Baraki that has spoken up in the chat, but if YouTube's not lying to me, we got 5 other people. Well, 4, because Peter doesn't count.
I don't count.
We got other people in the live stream as well. If you want to be here in the live stream, whether you just listen along or whether you're part of the conversation, you can do that over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, that will keep you up to date if things change. For instance, we are now at the other end of 2 episodes changing in a row, which so feels like it's been a lot of helter skelter shenanigans the last little bit. But we're now on schedule today. We'll be back 100% on schedule for the first time in a month.
Yeah.
But if things do change, the notifications are a good way to know what's going on. And subscriptions and likes, of course, help so that North Central Positronics doesn't destroy us, because we always know that they are out there lurking
Yeah.
in the wires. So then if you want to find the show notes, you can find that at darktowerpalaver.com. There won't be any show notes for this episode because it's a book club. But for all the other roundtables, we got show notes that should date back all the way to the beginning of the show. We also have the questions for new listeners, as well as is the spoke at the center of the Dark Tower Palaver universe's wheel. So the links for all things Dark Tower Palaver should be found over there. And then if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the best ways to do that.
Best way is to email us. It's show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then we have our social medias. We got Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then we got our Blue Sky. It's @darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. And then our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Instagram is Dark Tower Palaver, all one word, no spaces. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/users/Dark Tower Palaver. Get yourself a #Tad is Terrible sticker, shirt, pillow, all of the above.
Or the classic logo if you're into that.
The logo's right there.
If you're into the truth, it's just the Dark Tower Palaver.
#Tad is Terrible is true. It has been scientifically proven by many.
I disagree. All right, and then like I just alluded to, we are now back on schedule, which means that the next episode after this will be a fortnight from now. So that is we should be back on schedule, should be good to go there. And then I'm trying to remember if there's anything else we had to mention for the schedule or anything. I don't think so. So yeah, it'll be good to be back on schedule. We had a weird couple episodes there. So
well, also at the same time you have me coming back, so it's like I've been back for just a couple episodes and then we instantly have like scheduling conflicts for 2 straight episodes. It's like, my bad.
Well, you were to blame for one, I was to blame for the other, so
it balances out.
It
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Indeed. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump on in. We are currently in the 13th, or we're on the 13th book club for this. We are in, of course, Wizard and Glass. We are currently in part 2 of Wizard and Glass, which is titled Susan. We are in chapter 7. I don't remember how far through chapter 7 we are, but I do remember from the very beginning when we were outlining it, these part 2 and part 3 of this book are both 10 chapters long.
Yeah.
So we are 70% through this subchapter, or this section. So that's pretty cool. We're chugging along pretty quickly. We're going to be picking up here in chapter 7, which is titled subtitled On the Drop. We actually started subchapter 7 last episode. We're going to be diving into subchapter 4. So that is where we are starting off. So let's go ahead and dive on into subchapter 4. So it has been about a week since the welcome dinner. Let's see, and all the shenanigans at the Traveler's Rest. Sheemie appeared at the house that Susan and Cordelia shared, and he carried in his hand a large bouquet of flowers, mostly made up of wildflowers that grew on the drop, but there was also a scattering of wild roses. The boy wearing a wide, sunny grin as he swung the gate open, not waiting to be invited in. Susan had been sweeping the front walk while Cordelia had been around back in the garden. Which was not a surprise, as lately they had been better off if they stayed apart from each other. Susan had watched Sheemie approach with a mixture of fascination and horror. And then I have a direct quote here from the book, and it's, "Good day, Susan Delgado, daughter of Pat," Sheemie said cheerfully. "I come to you on an errand and cry your pardon for any troublation. I, for I am a problem for folks. Let's see, and I know it, same as them. These be for you here." He thrust them out, and she saw a small folded envelope tucked amongst the flowers. Troublation is a wonderful invented word, because tribulation also is trouble. So to mix trouble and tribulation is a wonderful word. As a fan of words, I really appreciate it, even though I know it's an invented word. So
all words are invented.
Then Cordelia called from the side of the house, asking if she heard the gate. Susan told her yes, while internally cursing her sharp ears. She then plucked the envelope from the flowers and put it in her pocket before Cordelia was in sight. Sheemie said it was from his third best friend, and he said he now had 3 friends, and listed Arthur Heath as his first best friend, Dick Stockworth as his second, and he started to say the third when Susan cut him off and told him to hush in a fierce voice that made Sheemie's smile disappear. She then said not to say anything about his friends. So Pause right here. I have a couple notes. Man, be it the first time or the umpteenth read, this aggravates me so much. Roland is so fucking stupid here. He knows her predicament. He's been told at the party, and he has some suspicions that some things are afoot in this town. And yet he pulls stupid shit like this. It's inexcusable for anyone that has half a brain, let alone a gunslinger, even though I know he is an apprentice gunslinger. This is like strategically, like, come on, man.
Yeah. Especially when you get into it later that, spoiler alert for the next subchapter, he signs it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an just a note or anything
Yeah.
like that where Susan can try and, like, pass it off or anything like that.
Yeah.
He signs his fucking name.
Yeah,
Like,
I guess that is true. I guess we are technically assuming that it's Roland.
yes.
But, I mean, come on.
We know.
Even the first time reading, I was like,
Dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, are you kidding me,
Yeah.
man? Because, again, even from their perspective, like, throw aside her troubles, say that he didn't care about her troubles, which I don't think is true, but let's say that was the case. Still, like, she's promised to the mayor, theoretically the most powerful person in town.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really the person that you want to, like,
piss off?
yeah,
Like-
that seems, I mean, yeah, I want to pull out my non-existent hair when I read that. I'm just
This also is like one of those, like, not inner baronies of Gilead and everything like that. So frontier justice maybe is a thing that exists here.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you take something from the mayor takes something from you, and it's usually your life.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. I definitely wouldn't want to. I just it makes me angry. Like I said, the first time I remember getting angry about it. This time, even doing the prep, I started getting angry. I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking, man?
I'm glad you got this subchapter then, because it didn't really bother me until I read your notes, and I'm like, oh yeah, he really is kind of an idiot, isn't he?
It's just like, and again, I know some might say, oh well, he's like 14 or whatever, but it's like he passed his trial. He is apprentice gunslinger now.
He figured out how to beat court as a 14-year-old.
Yes.
Don't tell me that he can't think
Yeah.
not to sign the note
Yeah.
or not send it
Or
not send flowers.
Yeah. It's just, oh my God. The flowers is the thing that annoys me. If it were just a note, I think I could be a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
But the flowers, like, I mean, the only thing you could probably do worse is if he delivered them himself, or if he, like, had a fireworks show that was to go off. Like, that'd be the only thing that'd be more obvious than a fucking giant bouquet of flowers. for
Hires
Christ's
a
sake.
plane to do the skywriting.
Skywriting.
saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, seriously, man. Like, flowers, they draw attention.
Well, it's
I mean,
also, let's be perfectly honest here, they're intimate. That is a lover's gift.
yes.
That is something that you give your lover on Valentine's Day or
Yeah.
anniversaries.
Or your
you know?
mom.
Mom on Mother's Day,
Mother's Day
yes.
just
But you
happened.
love your mom. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's an intimate gift. This
Yeah.
isn't something that you get for a friend
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
You send a dozen roses to the mayor's wife, the mayor's going to go, what the fuck?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, like I said, yeah, I couldn't cover this subchapter
Yeah.
without that aggravating me.
Baraki says it makes you pull out your chin hair.
No, that hurts.
And then a kid in love, a fool? Huh. Weird. Love has definitely blinded Roland, is what Jack says.
Yeah, and for sure. But it just, like, again, if he were just a kid, that'd be one thing. But the fact that he's a gunslinger and he's discovered enough to be suspicious that this isn't the quiet coastal town that his dad thought he was sending him
Right.
to. So it's just like, you got to be careful, man. Like, that, you don't have a lot of room for especially after the showdown too. You don't have a lot of room for mistakes, and you're making a potential big one here.
I think the one thing that can be said in Roland's defense, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit, okay?
Go
Roland doesn't know about Cordelia.
No, but I guess I'm even thinking of it from the perspective of the larger town.
Like a neighbor seeing it.
yeah.
Well, neighbor sees flowers get delivered to Susan. Okay, the mayor sent them. You know, that kind of thing. But the aunt situation is where my red flag goes off. Because exactly what we have later in the subchapter.
I think there's going to be a theme for this episode: small town people
Gossip,
being like very loud. Something happens in a small town, it spreads very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's like, "Oh, quiet small town." Yeah, it's quiet because they're all whispering. Like that's the experiences I've always had.
That's a good saying. I like that.
So I just, from my perspective, you know, what is it happens then if someone's like, "Oh, Mayor, I love those flowers you sent to Susan. I saw them being delivered."
I didn't send her flowers.
Like, yeah, it just feels to me like it's
What?
a very
Jonas, go kick their ass.
it's a very short trip to potential ruination here.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm not I wasn't super happy with this moment here.
Oh, hey, no, Potatoes in this chat. Gunslinger think with his gun dinger.
I mean, it's
bad gas travels in a small town also. That's very true.
Yeah.
As someone who's married someone from a small town.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're going to see it throughout this
Yes.
this episode. We're going to see a lot of talk traveling quickly in this small town. So let me see here. So my next note, also to add to this stupidity, we talked about how the universal truth of smaller towns and gossip travels near speed of light. So everyone here has heard about the dust up at the Traveler's Rest and know full well the genesis of that event was defending Sheemie. So to send him to bring the flowers is so much more stupid than even just the flowers, because and I think in my note I said Roland bringing them himself is literally the only thing that could be more stupid than this, because you all just like put up a giant freaking flag saying that, like, hey, we defended this kid, and now this kid's going to do. I feel like it's a very short trip for someone to be like, I wonder if those 3 boys are involved with
A
this.
plus B equals C. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So this isn't the cunning, Terminator Roland that we've come to know and love.
No.
This is a much younger, what behind the ears type Roland.
Dude, what a fool.
Okay, so and the funny thing is, the first time I read this too, I wasn't that far from his age. So
That's true.
But even still, I was still angry. I'm like, come on, man.
You were always way more mature than I was and stuff like that in high school and everything. So
Yeah, it's like when you're dating the daughter of the religious family. You can't have a hickey on her neck, man.
No.
Like, you just can't do that. Like,
no, absolutely not.
because in Utah, you always know when that happens, because the girl starts to wear a scarf in September or in August
In
or
July, and she's wearing a turtleneck.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Something then going on here. A funny flush raced across her skin and ran down her neck and cheeks and all the way down to her feet. She had heard a lot of talk in Hambry about Sheemie's new friends over the past week. It seemed that there was little talk about much else. She thought the stories were outlandish, but she wondered if the stories were not true, how were all the different accounts so similar? Very wise on her to put that together. She was also trying to get herself back under control as Cordelia was coming around the house. Sheemie was flummoxed at the sight of her because she was essentially mummied up from the sombrero to the top of her dress, and she was carrying a pair of garden shears. So it does also tell us, I don't think I put it in the notes, she's allergic to bees, so she's basically covered all of her exposed skin with gauze, which would be very troubling to anyone, let alone Sheemie, that's a little bit more simple. And then, of course, she has the garden shears, which those are very spooky. I've seen enough slasher movies to know that garden shears can go right into that, right between the clavicle there. I've seen that a number of times where you
And then when they pull them out, you get the...
Or Hot Fuzz, even. Wasn't there garden shears in that movie? Didn't they attack someone with garden shears in one of the scenes in that movie?
I think he kills someone.
I was about to say, because for some reason I'm mentioning that, I'm like, slashers are in my head, but then Hot Fuzz comes to my head too, which doesn't...
Is it the actors?
No,
isn't it the...
No, it's the lady at the gardening store.
Yeah. Okay. Tad, I'm going to break it to you. Those aren't normal garden shears. Those were giant ones. Normal garden shears are like hand ones. So
I've seen big ones.
She
too.
puts it in her pocket.
Yeah, it's gardening instruments should be feared.
You're not wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Cordelia saw the bouquet and bared down on the two of them and demanded from Sheemie who sent them. Susan tried to cover and was able to say that she didn't know, or that he didn't know who sent them, and that he is. And she started to explain Sheemie's condition. But Cordelia cut her off, saying that she knows that he is a fool, then began speaking loud and slow, asking him who sent the flowers. The sight of her had clearly frightened Sheemie, and she asked in the same boomer voice, which is what I'm calling it, because I think we've all experienced a boomer that finds someone that doesn't speak English and assumes that if they speak slowly and loudly, the person will suddenly then magically understand English.
Yes.
So in her loud boomer voice, she again asks if it was someone from Seafront, the mayor perhaps, and she said if he told her, she would give him a penny. Susan's heart sank as she figured he would tell, not knowing that he'd be getting her in trouble, as well as Will Dearborn, which of course we know is Roland. But he surprised her by saying he didn't remember and he had an empty head. She told him to get out of here and not expect any money, as well as to not come back no matter who asked him. She asked, and then she turned to Susan and asked why, or no, he asked her why she was all wrapped up in cobwebbies. He's got some good words here, Sheemie.
I like Sheemie.
And then she screamed at him to get out of here, and he jumped back from her in alarm and ran. And when she was sure that no one was coming, or she was sure he was not coming back, she turned to Susan and says, and I have a direct quote from the book: "Get those in some water before they wilt, Miss Oh So Young and Pretty." Gotta love that line, don't you? I could just, every time I read that, I think of you for some reason, because I could just picture you like gritting your teeth. And don't go mooning about wondering who your secret admirer might be. Then Aunt Cord had smiled, a real smile. What hurt Susan the most and confused her the most was that her aunt was no cradle story ogre, no witch like Rhea of the Coos. There were no monsters here, only a maiden lady with a few social pretensions, a love of gold and silver, and a fear of being turned out penniless into the world. And then she says, for folks such as us, Susie Pie, she said, speaking with a terribly heavy kindness, "'Tis best to stick to our housework and leave the dreams to them that can afford them." So, that's this Cordelia lady, man. She's something else. As I said, small towns, maybe it is that they are so small and quiet that everything just gets amplified in the gossips column. I don't mean to say like newspaper, but in the gossip section of all things, like
the grapevine.
The grapevine, that's going to travel quickly because there's so little to discuss. It's not like you've got like all these big, political actions happening like you'd see in a big city. So the small things is what people focus on.
Yeah, and the legend just grows.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is like Susan covers it here either in the last section or the section before, where she's like, well, why are all the accounts so similar then?
Yeah.
There's some truth to that then.
Kind of reminds you of what Court said after Roland beat him, and he said, wait for this story to grow a beard and a long shadow.
Let the legend go before you.
Yes.
Let that story go before you, because that paves the way and everything like that. Kind of the same thing is happening here. We see kind of a parallel between what happened in Gilead and what's happening here in Mejis.
Yeah. Yep, indeed. So then when a big event happens, obviously a talk is going to be happening about it for a long while. I mean, you hear about these really small towns where, they still might talk about their, their World War II hero that went from that town and got a bronze medal or a bronze star, which isn't the highest honor, but it's like that might be the largest honor that town ever had, or or like their football star from that town made it to the NFL and was a backup quarterback for a couple years, and like now the school's named after him and shit. Yeah. There's just everything is amplified. Whereas like if you're in Los Angeles, no one notices, right?
No,
like
that's a Tuesday.
Yeah, they still
14 died. Yep, sounds about right for a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. So I cracked up with Sheemie being frightened by Cordelia, whose head is covered in gauze. I just pictured The Invisible Man, the old black and white movie, and his being startled by her coming around the house is just hilarious to me. Like I can imagine this being played for laughs.
Absolutely.
The Flanagan series. And also my next note, luckily Cordelia assumes that they're from the mayor, or so it seems. That's at least good, because maybe that's even what Roland had in mind potentially. But still, that's a huge risk.
But he sent a sign no.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Yeah. Bribing him to tell her had me nervous as Susan, but the fact that he was able to follow what Susan said and go along with it makes me think that there's more to Sheemie than one might suspect. If that is the case, maybe he's not the worst ally for our boys to have.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of Tom Cullen from The Stand.
Yeah.
Tom Cullen is mentally challenged, but Nick a few times talks up for him to basically say he is that, but he also has like more thought under the surface than a lot of people give him credit for, which might give us an advantage where our enemies may not suspect more than anything than
because they look at just what's on the surface.
Yeah, and this reminds me of that.
Yeah,
I had already read The Stand by the time I read this, so it just reminded me of Tom Cullen, and it usually at this point it does, because it's like like Tom surprised you in The Stand a couple times even early on, and here Sheemie's surprising us, where it's like he caught on, because I was like, my stomach dropped the first time I read it. I'm like, oh god.
Here we go again.
She's bribing him, man. It's like, he's not going to know.
Well, especially after just a couple subchapters before, where you have that huge fight with Cordelia. It's like, oh great, here we go again, kind of thing. So
yeah, indeed.
I have a note here. It says Aunt Cord is just the worst, being jealous and bitchy just because someone sent her niece flowers.
Yeah.
Specifically calling out the line that you mentioned, the Miss Oh So Young and Pretty. and then calls her Susie Pie. What just a grade A bitch.
Yeah.
Like she really is just being so nasty to her niece for something that her niece has no control over, I mean.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that always gets me is when these characters are like, I can't believe that you would do this. And it's like, they sent me flowers. I didn't go buy them and send them to myself. Like,
yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, indeed. So what you're saying is I should get a button for almost, what is it? Oh, Miss Young and Pretty. Oh, so young and pretty.
Yeah,
I should get Mr. Frank Muller performing that line on a button. Is what you're saying?
No.
And then I just wanted to at least note that for that last section there about Susan reflecting on her aunt, we'll have more about that in the spoiler section. So I just wanted to at least mark that and say that we do have something I want to discuss, but I don't think I could discuss it as well now, so I'm going to save it for the spoiler section.
A little bit of a tease there for you.
Yes, indeed. And then Hayden says, you know what they say in Utah? Hickey on the neck, you're going to heck. Hickey on the thigh, high five, my guy. Oh, man.
I live in Utah and just started saying it. Hopefully it catches on. Trendsetter. Such a trendsetter. So we're going on to subchapter 5 now. Susan was sure the flowers were from Will, and she was right. There was a note, and it said, Dear Susan Delgado, I spoke out of turn the other night and cry your pardon. May I see you and speak to you? It must be private. This is a matter of importance. If you will see me, get a message to the boy who brings this. He is safe. Will Dearborn. So, just pausing right there. Yes, he signed it. Like we alluded to, even though
but it wasn't an envelope, so let's give him a little bit of credit.
A little bit.
So, yeah.
But still.
Yeah. It's not like it's encrypted or anything.
No.
Like if anyone else opened that, like you're done for. So
yeah. Like he could have signed it Rusher's owner or something like that. And Susan would have been like, "Oh, that's his horse that I rode." So, okay.
Yeah.
You know. No, he decides his freaking name.
Or your friend from the road.
Yeah, something like that.
That's obscure enough, right?
I mean, questions would still get asked, but again, playing devil's advocate, does Roland know about how bad Cordelia is? And how bad she treats Susan and everything?
No, I'm sure he doesn't.
You would assume that, it's her aunt. She's taking care of her. She loves her. She's going to not throw a bitch fit every time Susan does anything.
Yeah, Baraki says Cordelia is just jealous of Susan, and jealousy is the ugliest of emotions.
Yeah.
So, and that's absolutely true for sure. And I do think we didn't discuss that a lot with that last section, but ultimately that's probably what it is, right?
Jealousy.
Is jealousy.
Yeah.
The fact that she's never had, roses sent to her from or flowers sent to her from someone, right? Like she's kind of the old maid at this point, and she's whatever chance she ever had of having that romantic whatever is probably in the past.
I think it's even worse than that. As you're saying like it's gone. I think it's borderline because she's hoping Jonas, kind of thing. So I think it's even worse because she's coming to terms with it versus, I've already accepted that 5 years ago was my prime and I'm past that and everything like that. She's still trying to fake it. She's still trying to hope that something's going to happen. So it's a little bit worse even for her.
Yeah.
Because it's still it's falling off the that moment where you're falling off the cliff. Not teetering.
Or that second year in the chair leaning back. And that 1 second when you lose all
and
balance.
You're going.
Yeah.
That's where she's at. She's not teetering. She's not trying to balance. It's starting to go and she can feel it. And she's lashing out. And the only person nearby is Susan.
I find it interesting that you're the one that's bringing some devil's advocacy to Cordelia at all.
No. I'm not justifying in any way what she's saying. I'm saying it's worse for her, which is why she's being more of a bitch.
Okay, but you're actually like looking at, rather than just being like, oh, she's just a stone cold bitch. You're actually looking at some of the reasoning behind it. I'm giving you credit here, sir. Usually it's me that's defending some of the more hated
after
characters.
4 or 5 times through, you finally start thinking things a little bit differently. I mean, let's be honest. The first time through, you hated this book, and now it's your favorite.
Yeah.
So you look at things a different light after reading it a few times, having different theories and different ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that I came to realize. Also, let's be perfectly honest, like you said, I'm 20 years older than when I read these books.
Yeah.
So thinking with an adult mind, if you can call me an adult, versus a child's mind. I mean,
I might allow it.
Yeah, I'll allow
The
it.
jury's out right now.
We'll talk in a few years. But going on, Susan wonders what could be the matter of importance since it is underlined in the note, which I also wanted to notate. In the Kindle version, at least, it doesn't underline it. It italicizes it.
Was it underlined in the hard copy?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it says it's a matter of importance and everything. You got your copy right there? You find that. So she's wondering about the thing that's underlined, what the matter of importance is, but cautions herself as he might be smitten with her. And if so, whose fault is that? She thinks she had talked with him, ridden his horse, shown her legs when she dismounted, and then kissed him. Her cheeks and forehead burn at the thought of that night, and a hot ring slips down her body. She wasn't sure she regretted the kiss, but it was a mistake, regrets or no regrets. She knew seeing him would be a mistake, yet she really wanted to see him, and even willing to put her anger aside, but she had made a promise.
That is a no-go on the underline.
It's not underlined in the book. It's not underlined in Kindle, but she calls it out that it's underlined.
Yes, it's italicized. I think probably what it comes down to is when they're actually printing it, especially back in the day. Anytime that there's like drawings or something that's not like an actual keyboard thing, it's like an actual picture.
Yeah.
Like when the key was drawn a few books back. So I wonder if underlining is really as easy to do for like, I mean, obviously it sounds dumb because we have word processors that all do all that really easily, but I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely not. It is italicized though. Yeah, so no underlining. But it is called out in the text, so he does cover it.
Okay. My note here is we can just see how torn Susan is. I remember wondering the first time reading this what the consequences is of a broken promise, because what's going to happen if that happens? Is it death? Is it exile? This is a community. We don't know their laws. We don't know their customs and stuff like that.
Cordelia made it sound like exile.
Exile
like
at the least.
All of their land and property, which doesn't technically belong to them anymore.
It was all taken already.
Yeah, after Susan's dad died, it seems like the town took it all, and they're now like gifting some of it back in exchange for marrying this 16-year-old girl to the 60-something-year-old
Which is
man.
what had her so hot under the collar last time, is she's like, they're giving us back what was already ours.
Yeah.
Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, but I do think that Cordelia early on with one of the arguments mentioned that they'd be sent west essentially if she broke the promise on it. But then again, we also know that she's all about the money that she's wanting to get from this.
Is she overreacting and making it worse than it is?
Yeah, is it truthfully exile or is it more of just that she wants the money and she's trying to make it as bad as it possibly can be?
Is she being one of those parents that's, if you don't eat your beets, you're going to die tonight?
Yeah, or if you don't eat your carrots, you'll have to wear glasses.
Yeah, so they like take it and make it a drastic situation.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering like that, like what your thoughts were. Like, do you really think like a broken promise would be enough for exile in Hambury with what you know about them and everything? No spoilers, obviously. But
I can see it just because, just from the fact of again, this is obviously more of a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Once Pat Delgado died, they took all of his lands and properties, and the government, it's a mayor, it's a small township, but the ruling class of this place took it all away. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't let Sue. I mean, I know she's a kid, but I don't get the sense that once she turned 18 or 21, whatever it would be, that she was going to get any of this stuff back. So
I think it's 16 if she's able to enter into these adult contracts and stuff like that. I think she is of age.
Yeah.
She doesn't talk about going to school. She
Yeah.
doesn't talk about any of that kind of stuff, so she already kind of seems like you're talking about like 18, 21 for our society.
And it doesn't, not to mention that Cordelia is there as a next of kin as well. So
yeah.
The fact that they've taken it all away, I would say that, especially because it does sound like obviously 60-something-year-old mayor wants this 16-year-old bride. So if that were to be, this promise were to be broken, I would expect exile would be in the cards, if nothing else other than the fact that he would be vindictive and
right.
Or maybe it could even be death. It could be a thing where it's like threaten death to see if we can get her to back out of the back out and get back into the marriage. So
there's a lot of different ways that this could go.
Yeah. And then my note, this just feels like she's coming over and I'm going to help her study from a different world.
Yeah.
I don't trust Roland here. Maybe it's because I was once also a 14-year-old boy.
He says that he wants to meet her alone.
Yeah. There's an element to this where I'm like, is he really want to meet with her for larger importance, or is that all a pretense to Get with her.
Yeah, as the father of a daughter, I would not let my daughter meet Will Dearborn if he sent this note.
Yes,
Like,
indeed.
no.
Well, I mean, because again, you were also once a 14-year-old boy.
I
so
was.
You know what was behind. Said, I want to help her study for her algebra test.
Some say I'm still there, maturity-wise, but we won't discuss that. Speaking of that, Hayden says in the chat, I'd say Peter is in the 4th trial run of adulthood, like a big Costco sample over several years. And Baraki says, yeah, if facelifts were a thing in this world, Cordelia would have one. Absolutely, if she could afford it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It does sound like she can, too. Susan made some allusions in her head. I don't think she ever called it out that, she believes that her aunt does have quite a bit of money already.
All the money that's come in from the mayor and places like that have gone straight to Cordelia, not to Susan.
Yeah, even though she still cries poverty, Susan, in her own mind, it was never outwardly like, it wasn't in an argument, but I think it was during one of the arguments, I think Susan thought to her head, she's like, she's not really poor. She's got all this money stuffed away in a coffer, and I know she's got plenty, but she's still just playing the poverty card.
Exactly. So later...
Lovely lady, that Cordelia.
No. So later that night, she lays sleepless, tossing and turning. Susan does. She's having a debate on if she should respond at all, making up all different kinds of notes in her head, some haughty, some cold, some with lace edges of flirtation. After she hears the midnight bell ring, she decides enough is enough. She throws herself out of bed, goes to her door, and hears her aunt snoring away. She closes her door and crosses to her little desk and tears a piece of paper in half. It says that... It covers that in Hambury, the only crime greater than wasting paper is wasting threaded stock line. Then wrote quickly, worried any hesitation would condemn her to more hours of indecision. No salutation or signature, just simply, and this is a quote from the book, I may not see you, 'twould not be proper. She folds it small, tucks it under her pillow, and falls asleep in less than 2 minutes. I have a question. Because we've covered this before with Roland already in previous books. How scarce paper is and how sacred it is. Roland's aghast in the airplane when he sees like a guy with a legal pad, like
writes on half of it,
like a sentence, tears it off, crumbles it, and drops it on the floor.
Yeah, he's like
mortified.
Yes, because paper is next to gold in terms of value in this world. Yes.
So I don't know if she's just saying this because it's a phrase. Or if legit, the greatest crime in Hambury is wasting threaded livestock. And the second greatest crime is paper waste. Does that mean that murder is third? Am I supposed to take this figuratively, or is this a figure of speech here? That's my question for you, Tad. Because
it's metaphor.
Okay, I was like,
not the
part of me was like,
not the
I can see it.
The stock part, threaded stock, I would say probably not. That might actually be the greatest sin, just because we've seen from context clues of what this world is that there's so much mutation out there that to have like non-mutated animals would be probably more valuable than a human life. So that one, yes. Paper, I think that's probably just like being a little bit metaphorical would be my guess.
It's like drinking caffeine here in Utah.
But I would say that it's so ingrained. That's my note. That's so ingrained in their culture that I just don't think that it's even possible for someone to break those rules. I think it's just going to be like second nature, type thing.
I've never given it any other thought in previous readings because I kind of just blast through this part and everything. But this time doing like the deeper dive, I really got, wait, is this one of those actual laws where it's like, okay, you killed a man. Okay, well, let's take him out back and let's cut his head off and he's let's hang him. He's done. He wasted paper. Oh, that's it. To the rack.
No, I think I also interpret it like in our world, like when it comes to like agriculture and farming, you know, like there's not a lot wasted. You use everything you can.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I think it's more of that than it is a true hanging offense.
Yeah. I love the fact that Susan just falls asleep so fast after writing the note. I've done this myself. Whenever I can relate to a character, it just makes them feel so much more real to me. Where it's like, oh my God, I've done that. I'm mulling something over, and what am I going to do, and everything.
Like we mentioned that in the last episode, though.
Yeah.
You have the ability. One of your mutant abilities is to be able to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Pretty much in the most inconvenient places.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever fallen asleep in school. Not for lacking of wanting to or whatever, but it's just I just can't do it.
I used to sleep through classes like every single day. It's like, third period.
Yeah. Yeah, and me,
Put my
like,
head down and I'd be out.
Me, still to this day, like if it's like light out once I wake up,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not sleeping again for the rest of the day. I just can't. Like naps aren't my thing. It's just, it's not. Like it takes a lot of real shenanigans in my schedule to get me to actually like sleep during the day.
You're not the only person that I've told that I'm like, yeah, I stayed up too late last night. I just couldn't get to sleep, and they're like, you? What? Like, yes, it happens to me. I'm not a light switch.
No, that's just because you're probably like playing a game or something. It's not that you can't sleep; it's you're choosing not to.
I'm choosing not to.
Yeah. Also, my last note here: seeing the turmoil here, though, really shows her side of this. She was the wronged party in the last meeting, so the fact that she is kind of over it enough to like desire to be with him and see him again, after what Roland said to her, probably shows this relationship is not over. With the things that he said. So
yeah,
I don't know, because ultimately, like it comes down to like we've seen both of them right after the party, and yes, harsh words were spoken, but Roland thought about her when he was going to bed. She thought about him and she was going to bed. But I'm glad that with King is actually having us spend more time with Susan here in this time period, because ultimately she's the one that truthfully has more of a ground to stand on to say fuck you, I don't ever want to see you again.
Yeah,
like she does. She has that. She has that ground.
Not only that because of the fight, but also because of her situation.
Yeah.
She has much more to lose here than, Roland, you're bad in Hambry? Go home.
Yeah.
But her, we were literally just talking about what are the penalties for this society if you break a promise.
Yeah.
And this is more, when I say promise, you have to think of it in our sense, it's a legal contract. What happens in our society if you break a legal contract? You get sued, you pay the money. If you can't pay the money, you go to prison.
Yeah.
They don't have that really here.
Yeah.
So head west. And from what we hear, nothing good is that direction.
No.
Just like us here in Utah, nothing good is west of us.
Oh, I don't know about that. There's a beautiful place called Lee's Liquor west of here.
That's
it's
true.
One of the most beautiful places on earth.
I've been there with you. You're not wrong. But going on here.
Heil Allen.
Alan,
welcome.
yeah.
Welcome.
I meant to say that. I said it in the chat.
Yeah, you
but
did
I forgot
say it.
to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Forgetful me. Shame.
Well, at your age, you know.
I know. So the
And he
next.
says he's west of us.
Alan is?
Yeah.
He's also east of us.
What? No, he's west.
He's east of
No,
us.
we're talking. I mean, when Peter said that, I was talking directly west of us.
I was meaning California, but
yeah.
that's
that's
because there's nothing in Nevada. So I drove it a year ago.
There might be a man walking with boots and jean jackets.
Exactly, nothing good.
Walking along the highways and byways of Nevada.
Nothing good. So the next day she goes into town and goes to the Traveler's Rest, which at 11 in the morning had all the charm of something which had died badly at the side of the road. I had to stop because that is just such a fun description. Because not only did it die by the side of the road, but it died badly.
I think Hayden's saying no to my Randall Flagg reference.
Good. He should.
Hey, he's a happy guy.
Yeah.
He's always smiling. He has that smile button on his jacket and stuff.
I can't say what I want to say.
And then Alan says, Hooper says the wastelands are definitely in Utah, Nevada, etc. Yeah, I would say that more of our area is more wastelandy for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah, something died on the side of the road badly.
Because you know what I picture there?
Roadkill.
Roadkill, but like one that's potentially bloating in the heat, like just...
There's an instance, I cannot remember what it's from.
A bit of decay, maybe.
It might be a real serial killer, or it might be a terrible character in a book. I think it's a terrible character in a book where they're playing with a cat that had its back broken by a car. That's what instantly popped into my mind here.
Yeah.
But it was still alive. Like, he was, like, poking it with a... it is. It's from It.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the
some of Henry's kids.
No. Yeah. It's Patrick Hockstetter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what instantly popped into my head with that. So King...
Before he gets eyeball leached.
Gooey.
Oh, Hayden says no, ew, yucky. Peter needs a spray bottle to spritz Tad every time he says something unbecoming. Gross.
I would absolutely take that if Tad would let me.
Hey, and I just got to take some credit for giving the eyeball leech a reference here. That's a good deep
good
cut
one
for it.
That's a deep cut.
All right, so then my note here, I have seen this too, a place that is lively at night and you see it during the day and it just looks like a husk of the place.
Yeah.
I've seen it at bars here in Utah as well as even like concert venues. Like we work we work near a concert venue. When it's on, that place is a picture of life. When it's closed like during the day, it is the picture of death.
It
like,
reminds me of like the super flu in the stand and everything like that. It's just desolate.
Yeah.
You'll see like pieces of paper going by.
Yeah.
There's trash cans turned over, and it's just like, this place is abandoned.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, there was a concert here last night. That's right. Oh.
And you see that with like bars, like especially bars that have like an outdoor, like a patio or something.
Yeah.
Because like at night when you see it, like the doors are open, there's people everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it's not, it's like it's closed, shuttered. There's no one there. The parking lot's empty. It's just so yeah. I know what she's getting at here.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate her talking about dead things too. That's always fun.
Hashtag Tad is terrible.
Hayden says new merch idea: DTP spray bottle with the hashtag Tad is terrible on it.
Yes.
And he also threw some emojis in there, so thank you for that, Hayden.
Yeah, emojis are the worst. Sheemie's outside doing some gardening, wearing a comical pink sombrero and singing. Susan doubted that many of the patrons would wake up feeling as well as Sheemie does. It's true. She takes a quick look around to make sure no one is watching and taps him on the shoulder. He looks frightened at first before realizing it's Susan. She doesn't blame him as she's heard the stories about how DePape had almost killed him for spilling a drink on his boot. And again, I just put a line here. The legend is alive and well because the fact that she knows that that's what it was. Sheemie spilled a drink on DePape's boot. Yeah. That's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So it just kind of shows you like this is not one of those he said, she said telephone things where it's like, yeah, Sheemie tripped and spilled a drink on DePape. Oh, Sheemie tripped DePape and he spilled his drink? No, it's not. It's not getting convoluted at all.
Yeah. Also, my note here, Sheemie was mentioned during that whole showdown by Stanley. In his mind, he thought about Sheemie, and what he said is that he loved the kid because he never took a drink.
Yeah.
That is probably why he's so lively in the morning.
He's not hungover.
Whereas the rest of the town, maybe not so much.
Sleeping off a little.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as the legend, oh yeah, small towns, man, I swear. See, it just keeps coming back around.
Yep.
I know it's only been a week, so it is also fresh in people's minds. But
Yeah.
I would have to imagine even 3 months from now, this story's still going to be pretty big.
Yeah.
So
unless something else happens, that's
Yeah.
the thing that it always is like, is there a bigger story? Nope. Well, what are we going to talk about? How about the showdown at the Traveler's Rest? Oh man, now I was there and I kicked the gun away.
Yeah.
You weren't there.
Yeah.
I could hear the old farts doing that.
Yeah.
At the corner store, sipping a root beer.
Yeah, indeed.
Yummy stuff, that root beer.
No, the worst.
So Sheemie says
there is not a worse soda. There isn't.
I would challenge you on that.
None.
Mountain Dew's better than root beer.
It's at least it's a little bit. It's pretty low down there, but it's they're both definitely south of crab juice. But root beer's the worst.
I like it when I get one over on Tad. It's good. Sheemie says it's good to see her and does a bow in an amusing imitation of the inner bear, and he's favored by his 3 new friends. Smiling, she drops him a curtsy, but wearing jeans, she has to pretend the skirt-holding part. He asks if she sees his flowers and points them out to her. She asks if he grew them, and he says that he had, and that Arthur Heath promises yellow ones. Susan says she's never seen yellow ones. Sheemie says he hasn't either, but they have them in Gilead, and he would do anything for Arthur since he saved Sheemie's life. He talked about the bird's head and that Arthur talks to it and it makes him laugh. Susan asks if he really would do anything, even for Will as well, and Sheemie says he would. She gives him the note and asks him to deliver it to Will and tells him not to tell anyone. Sheemie says like when he brought her flowers, and she agrees. She stands watching him tend to his garden, fighting an urge to take it back and rewrite it, agreeing to meet Will. But then Reynolds comes out of the rest, and she decides it is time to leave. After all, Reynolds talks to Jonas, and Jonas talks all too much to Aunt Cord. And there would be questions as to why she's spending time with the boy who had brought her the flowers, and she didn't want to answer those questions.
Yep.
My note here, Sheemie is just so wholesome, I'm glad that he didn't get killed.
Yeah.
Like, if he got killed, I would have been really, really sad.
Yeah. And my note, yeah, I didn't really have an opinion on him much before, and even during the events of the showdown. I, of course, didn't want to see him ended, but I had very little of opinion on him. But the flower scene, now this, he is becoming very likable for me, for sure. So, yes, I agree.
And then still seeing the indecision in Susan's heart here. Give me the note back. I'm going to rewrite it.
Yeah.
She just stands there.
Yeah.
Like, stuck to the spot until she sees, is it Reynolds? Yeah, sees Reynolds come out, and it's just like, oh, shit. Right, I got to go.
And he happened to be looking down, rolling a cigarette. Otherwise, he probably would have seen her.
Exactly.
So, and then my note, honestly, her indecision really illustrates that she is still a child that is being forced to make adult decisions, and think about things like that, and think about things as an adult. I know this is harder. This is a harder world than ours, so maybe it's a bit more normal. But in our world, I think this is some of the saddest shit to see when you see young kids that have to think and strategize like adults. You know, usually that's like abused children or whatever. So, of course, we do know this world has moved on. It's not as soft as our world, but still, I can't help but taking my bias of my world and being sad that this 16-year-old girl has to be in the mindset like this.
It's terrible when you think about it, what she has to go through. And then her fear of Aunt Cord, even seeing her around Sheemie, really drives home how bad their relationship has gotten. Not that we needed more. It's like, even if she's seen with Sheemie, like she could be standing outside his fence, stopped on the sidewalk, as we see the sidewalk, and saying, good morning, and someone would go tell Cordelia, and she'd be like, what were you doing with that boy?
Yeah. And then my note, beyond their relationship, though, after the flower thing, and then having word of her being seen talking to Sheemie in town would really be hard to explain away and would draw further suspicion back on the flowers. Because, Cordelia took it as, like, it's the mayor, probably. But the second that this word of this were to get back to her, that's gone. It would no longer be about the mayor.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like, wait, why are you talking to that kid that brought the flowers?
Wait. Is there more to these flowers than what I thought?
And we already saw, like, just a look from Roland at the dinner was enough to send her off the edge.
Why does he look at you so?
Yeah, so it's like she's obviously like hyper fixated and suspicious on things. So I would say just being seen talking to Sheemie after the flower thing is probably not the best. Like, just because Cordelia. Small towns in Cordelia being a certain type of
It's
person.
like they breed them. Small towns. They do.
Yeah.
That's it for subchapter 5.
Awesome. Let's jump on over to subchapter 6.
Real fast, Hayden says, I have a new root beer cheesecake recipe Tad should try.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think such things would happen. I don't think, whatever creation in all humanity would allow those things to coexist.
I think the day that you try root beer cheesecake is the day that Hayden hugs a bear.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Or goes to Bear World in a convertible.
That sounds like fun.
Subchapter 6. So Susan tells herself that this is the end of it, water under the bridge, and she may as well stop thinking about the past. She stopped Pylon and looked down.
Okay, hold on. Time out. Help me out here. My brain is broken for a second. So this is now 3 weeks past, right? Because now we're past the fight with Cordelia where she came down wearing her dad's shirt, which was 3 weeks. Past the dinner, right? I don't think it's in this one. I'm just trying to remember last episode.
Yeah, something like that.
Right?
No, because this one said it's about a week after the welcome dinner.
Is when the flowers were sent, but when was the fight with Cordelia over her dad's shirt? Wasn't that after that, which is why she's out riding, remembering this?
I don't know. I'm confused
that's I was confused too, and I meant to put a note and I forgot.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Stephen King loves jumping around in time in these books, so it's definitely possible. So she stopped Pylon and looked down the length of the drop, and there were a lot of horses on the drop today. She could not help herself from thinking about Will Dearborn. She was thinking what bad luck it was to meet him. If not for that chance encounter, she might well have made peace with her situation by now. She thought that she was not afraid of losing her virginity, and the thought of carrying a baby actually excited her. But Will Dearborn had changed everything. His remarks to her while they danced stuck with her like an earworm of a song. which is how relatable is that?
Oh yeah.
How many of us have had some horrible song stuck in our head that you just want to get rid of and it won't go away? It was cruel and self-righteous, but there was a grain of truth to it. Rhea had been right about the mayor, which, again, just a reminder, Rhea told her very explicitly that the mayor didn't give a shit about a kid. All he cared about was grabbing on something that didn't, fold when he grabbed it. So I think that's the phrasing that Rhea used.
It was a little bit more graphic than that.
So Rhea had been right about the mayor. She no longer had any doubts. She figured even witches are right about men's lusts, even if they are wrong about everything else. Not a happy thought, but likely a true one. It was Will Dearborn that made this all so hard. It was he who goaded her into arguments, and then it was he that came to her in her dreams and kissed her. So my note here, King is so damn good. This feels just so real. The confusion of not only young love, but also young people being strapped with problems that should be saved for adults. Like, all this just feels real.
We were just talking about that with, like, this is not something that a kid who's 16 years old should have to be dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's where my note, it is very always great storytelling when kids are forced to handle adult problems. My mind instantly goes to, you have Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, Star Wars. Luke and Leia are children, basically. I mean, they're like 16. Well, no, they're 8. They're 19. So I mean, they're young adults in that one. But you look at a lot of.
But in Obi-Wan, Leia as a kid.
Obi-Wan, Leia as a kid.
Stuff.
Luke's a kid in that. Anakin's a kid in Episode 1. There's all these great different examples of children having to handle adult situations and everything. Yeah. And I'll say it right now. King's the best at doing it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason that it is my favorite book by Stephen King.
Yeah.
It's kids.
Well, it's the clown,
kids,
of course, right?
No, it's the kids. It's the Losers Club.
Yeah.
And he writes them so well.
Yeah, indeed. So then my note here is my next note is it is interesting to see this insight to her too, because we have only known her since meeting Roland on the road. Well, for the most part, I guess we did see her at Rhea's hut, but overall we've really known her since meeting Roland. So this gives us an idea that she likely did not have this same conflict about it all before he entered the picture. I don't know. That just feels like an interesting thing to note, because really, I mean, I don't even remember what was in her mind at Rhea's hut. I mean, I know she was freaked out by Rhea, the smell of the hut. She sees the pink glow, but it's like, were we really getting a lot about, like her thought process on the mayor? Like, of course, Rhea brought it up and kind of put her mind in a negative place, but like, I don't know. Yeah, it does actually seem like Roland actually changed quite a bit about her thought process here. And then my last note here, isn't Rhea just so bad because she tells the truth in some aspects? It would be easier if she just lied constantly, but the fact that she told truths and told them plainly and cruelly, it makes it like the hardest stuff to hear.
Oh yeah, it's so hard to swallow when you hear that. And Baraki, wait, let me double check, make sure that's who said it. Yeah, Baraki says like Beverly stuff that she goes through, and it's the same thing here with Susan. It's hard to listen to this. It's hard to hear what happens with her and everything. Yeah. The mistreatment, especially from Cordelia, is what gets me the most. Yeah. To treat a child that you're supposed to be caring for. Yeah. Your flesh and blood. It's your niece. That's your brother's daughter. Yeah. You know? Like you have a niece. Yeah. This is not something that is only for, people like me who have kids. This is something that you can relate to. If something happens to your brother and it falls to you to raise your niece, you're going to do the best damn job that you can. Yeah. Because that's the kind of man you are. Yeah. Cordelia is not. Yeah. Oh, it pisses me off.
Oh, I cannot wait.
It's such a
wave until we see this lady on screen.
It's such a wave of emotions, how pissed off and sad I get reading this stuff with Susan. Yeah. King just tips me from one side to the other constantly. I'm just rocking back and forth.
Yeah. I just can't wait. Years from now, Flanagan series is going. We're in the 3rd or 4th season. We're into this section, and every episode we check in with you. And ask, like, how do you feel about Cordelia after this latest episode?
Every throwable item needs to be kept out of my reach when I'm watching her. Because I will probably put something through my TV if she's as bad as the book makes her out to be.
I have seen you pace in anger over Mrs. Carmody. So
this is true.
Yes,
this is true.
All right, so going on here, she dismounted and walked downhill a little ways with the reins in her hands. Pylon followed, and when she stopped and looked off in the distance, he began to crop. She thought she needed to see Will Dearborn one more time so that she could let her innate practicality reassert itself. She needed to see him at his right size instead of what her mind, or more likely her heart, had built him into. Once that was done, she could get on with her life. Maybe that's why she had ridden this path today and a handful of days before that, because she knew that he rode this part of the drop. She turned from the drop knowing that he would... She turned to the drop knowing that he would be behind her, as if her thoughts had called to him or her caw. But she turned and saw only blue skies in the ridgeline. Bitter disappointment filled her so much that she could taste it like wet tea leaves. That's gross. Because I mean, to me, tea is gross. I'm a coffee kind of guy, but
Garbage water.
what was that?
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, yeah. And I agree with Ted there. She wandered from her cropping horse and moved back towards him. Back towards him, her horse. She decided she needed to go back to the house and make an apology. The sooner she did that, the sooner she'd be done with it. And as she grabbed Pylon's rein, she saw the silhouette of a rider up a ways up the path. In a panic, she told herself to run the other direction and get out as quick as she could, in case that it was coming like a wind to blow her and all of her plans into the sky. But she didn't run. She stood there with Pylon, and then Will was there. He dismounted in a liquid movement that she didn't think she could even match with all of her years of horsemanship. He did not do any silly grandiose bow, but just stood looking at her seriously and looking very adult. They stood there looking at each other, and in her heart, she felt the wind begin to blow. She feared it and welcomed it equally.
Yeah.
That's not a happy. I mean, to a point, maybe. But
again, we're rocking back and forth between them conflicting emotions here. That's what King's doing to us constantly.
Yeah, indeed. So my first note, do you think that she is genuine in her see him one last time, or is it self-delusion? Is she self-deluded and it's another way to basically embrace her desires to be with him? Kind of like what I said earlier about Roland being the boy that wants to come over and help the girl with her algebra study.
Yeah.
Is this the reverse of that now, where it's like, well, I just want to see him one last time to really put him mentally in his place of the right, because he's become this like big thing in her mind. It's like, let's just shrink him back down to being just this 14-year-old boy that he is, and I can move on. What do you believe there with her?
I swear, after this cigarette, I'm gonna quit. I swear.
So for her, it's the same deception.
Oh, absolutely. She's
Okay.
lying to herself.
Yes.
I've done that to myself. I know what it's like to want to quit something, want to let someone go, and stuff like that. And yet here I am still recording a podcast, getting abused by Tad.
You love it.
Do I?
Search your feelings.
I don't know. I have a mental picture of what you are in my head, and then every time I get with you, it's just so much worse.
Oh, you honor me.
You're welcome.
And then my next note, she is riding that specific spot on the drop for nearly an entire week, hoping to run into him. That makes me feel, it actually feels relatable to me. I remember being a young fool, infatuated with someone and purposely walking or riding my bike in a specific direction, hoping to run into them.
Yep.
I remember that as far back as like probably 4th or 5th grade, like grade school level, where it's just like, oh, well, I can come into the neighborhood one direction and get to my house within two houses. Or I can go around the block, and I'm gonna pass somebody else's house, and I kind of like her, so maybe if she's outside, I can run into her. I that feels very relatable to me.
Yeah,
so.
I put one down in school, taking a different route to your next class just to see that person. If it's a longer walker, it makes you late.
Yeah,
I remember junior high. My next class was around the corner and down 2 classes, like you said with your houses. I would walk around and make a big old rectangle, just to the chance to see the girl that I had a crush on. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. It's very, very relatable.
Yeah.
And then David's in the chat. Welcome, David.
Hi,
I don't
David.
know if I saw him mention anything earlier. If he did, I apologize. But he says there's the main character from a Buick 8 has a last name Dearborn.
Oh.
So that's a fun little connection there. And then Baraki says Susan is lying to herself about Roland. She is making reasons to see him, but really she just wants to see him. It's subtext and it's brilliant writing. Yeah, I was asking the question, but ultimately I have my opinion on the
Yeah.
answer already. Like
She's the same opinion.
Yeah, she's lying to herself as much as Roland is when he's like, oh, I just I have some matter of importance to the affiliation. I've got to see you.
That's
like,
all I want. I promise.
Yeah, sure.
I want to do your homework. I want to tutor you.
Yeah, sure it is. That's why you're playing at Barry Manilow Records when she comes in for
And while your
algebra
buttons
homework.
on, while you're Fabio over here with your shirt unbuttoned.
Yeah, indeed. And then David also says Duke can pronounce propriety, but he can't say aspirin. Oh, that's brutal. Poor Roland.
True.
It is true, though.
Hashtag David tells the truth.
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then my next note, this feels like a big moment. We know how they left it, and we know they both we've seen enough from both to kind of know where both of their heads are at. So this finally meeting after all this time, and there was some obvious some nasty words said from Roland's side. This just feels like a big moment to me. I remember even the first time reading it just being like, oh God, here it is. Like, it just feels like we've been building to this since that broke up. That dinner, it feels like we've been building to this moment. So it just feels like a big moment.
It's a very TV kind of moment too. You're going to spend an episode, maybe two, building back up the get back together moment, or the reconcile moment, or is it going to be another fight moment? We don't know what's going to happen. So that's where you're building the tension towards it. What is this one feeling? What is this one feeling? And everything like that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point out, how about her reaction to just get on her horse and get the hell out of there? Run.
Yeah.
There's a knee-jerk reaction to her there. She sees him. She knows who it is without confirming it. And she's just like, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, go the other direction as fast as possible. Yeah, and then my last note, very ominous allusion to Caw and the wind here.
Yeah.
It's set up earlier on where she's worried about Caw, like a wind coming through and destroying her life. And then the last line there where it says that, she feels the wind.
Yeah. And Caw is a whirlwind, right?
Yes. We've seen that enough to know that there's a lot involved there.
That's right. Subchapter 7.
And this is a long one.
This is a very long one. Will says good morn, and he is glad to see her. She doesn't say anything. She's wondering if he could hear how loud her heart is beating. He took a step towards her, and she backed up a step, looking at him mistrustfully. He lowers his head for a moment, and then looks up again and says he cries her pardon. And, do you? She asks coolly, and he says what he said that night was unwarranted. She feels a real spark of anger and says that she doesn't care if it was unwarranted. She cares that it was unfair and it hurt her. A tear rolls down her cheek. She wasn't cried out after all, because again, remember, this is right after the fight with her aunt over her dad's shirt and everything.
Yeah.
And the blouses from the mayor and everything. This is not immediately after going to see Sheemie and delivering the note. That was a while ago. So maybe days, maybe weeks. We were uncertain on the time frame.
I would say probably days.
I swear that it said 3 weeks after the showdown last time.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's what I have in my head. But anyways, so she isn't cried out after all. She thought what she said would shame him, but instead he blushed. He says that he fell in love with her, probably even before the kiss. She laughs and says, Mr. Dearborn. He asks her to call him Will, and she sticks with Mr. Dearborn. That's one of those classic, Mr. Dearborn. No, please call me Will. Mr. Dearborn. I'm getting a point across here.
Yeah.
She says how ridiculous that sounds. Love on the basis of a single meeting and a sisterly kiss. That happens in stories, but not in real life. Will's eyes never leave hers, and she could see the truth there. He accepted the love like a fact rather than a flower, and her contempt did not matter. He says again that he cries her pardon, and he doesn't ask her to return his love. He remarks on how he spoke out of turn regarding her complicated affairs, and that he called the mayor a bit of a fool. She reminds him that he also said the mayor was fond of strong drink and berry girls. Will actually slaps his forehead with the heel of his hand. If Arthur had done this, Susan would have thought it was a comic gesture done on purpose, but not Will.
Yeah.
And
from what we know of Cuthbert and Roland,
that's accurate.
That's a pretty fair assessment.
Accurate. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I want to pause here because this little bit here is like a page and a half on the Kindle, but already there's just so much tension here. The step back when he steps towards her.
Yeah.
call me Will. No, Mr. Dearborn, and everything like that. Oh, are you sorry? There's just so much here already in this first part of, and like you mentioned, this subchapter is pretty lengthy, so we're going to get into it more.
Yeah. Also, I did pull it up. Yes, you are actually right. It was 3 weeks out. The beginning of chapter 7 said 3 weeks have passed since a welcoming dinner at Mejis. So 3 weeks.
Okay.
Still not months, because remember we're only talking like, we know that like the bonfire and like the reap, like all that stuff.
The harvest, the fall harvest. Basically.
Yeah, because Rhea said that he can only have you after the bonfire, and and she said that was like 3 months. So we definitely aren't talking months, because I think that's probably going to be jumping way too far. I just, in my head, like I don't know. The first time reading though, I remember just thinking to myself, oh, that's going to be probably close to the end of the book.
Yeah,
it just feels like King setting that up the way he does. It just feels like you're framing the story from the beginning.
You put a date like that in the mind of the reader and everything.
You're telegraphing that, like that
Chekhov's gun kind of thing.
Yeah, that's probably the end of when things come to a head. So 3 weeks though, that is a pretty hefty jump for only having 3 months to deal with.
So 1 week after the flowers get sent and the notes and everything like that, then 2 weeks after that is when they have the fight over the blouses and everything.
Yeah,
and the shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on your note here.
All right. I would say love at first sight is a thing for stories, but I would say it also is for children who lack the real life experience that make those sort of things impossible.
Yeah.
Now I won't say that the love at first sight that children actually experience ever generally turns out to be like a lifetime thing, right? Like, how many high school sweethearts do you know that are still married? Like, there might be a couple, but it's like they're the rare exception. Most of them are like they don't make it through college as a couple. They move on to other things. So
I have a strong belief in infatuation at first sight.
Yes, absolutely.
But the ability to be a working couple, because it's work to be in a relationship, it's work to be married and everything, as someone who's been married for 12 years can say, is that you have to be compatible with that person. And the thing is, especially high school, you're not done becoming who you are.
No.
I was talking to someone at work the other day, and I mentioned to her that there's an article that I read just last year that they're discovering that the human brain doesn't stop developing until 25, 26.
Yeah.
When before it was thought it was 18 to 21, which is why we set those legal limits there. So,
which is funny because who seemed to always knew that was insurance companies and rental companies, because you can't rent a car
until you're 25.
Until you're 25. So.
Your insurance drops when you turn 25.
Yeah.
So in between 18 and 25, it just goes up.
Yeah.
But then at 25, it suddenly takes it's like they knew this and everything like that.
The people who their income depends on it, they seem to have already known that.
Yeah. So I wanted to. That's what I want to say about love at first sight, is that it may seem like love at first sight, but honestly, you don't know who you really are at 16.
Yeah.
Who you were at 16 is vastly different than who you are today. Same with me.
Yeah.
We are two very different people than we were at 16.
Yeah.
We're both still as immature as ever, but...
It reminds me, because my grandparents actually got married due to a shotgun wedding.
Oh, okay.
They were both... I don't know if they were 18 yet. If they were, they were barely 18. And my great-grandma was like, well, this isn't going to last.
Yeah.
Like, she told that to them directly.
Yeah.
She's like... You guys won't be together that long, because I remember them sharing that their 50-year anniversary.
Yeah,
but it's like, so there are exceptions, certainly.
My in-laws are the same way. They were married as teens, and they're still together.
Yeah,
they've been going for 40, 50 years, something like that. So it's like there are exceptions that prove the rule, but I don't think that it's love at first sight.
No, it's infatuation to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then my note here, Roland really did put his foot in his mouth that first meeting, didn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
I wasn't here for that, but oh, man.
Yeah, and then my note was, yes, I'm so glad that King brought us back to this moment, because, and then revealed it to Roland, because at the time of reading it, we knew the situation enough, so we knew that Roland is putting his foot in his mouth. She knew it, but he didn't. He was the only one that wasn't in the know there. So I'm so glad this is coming back around for him to realize how awkward that all was.
Oh, what a fool.
I love it. I do love it.
So after the hand to the forehead thing with Roland, silence falls between them, but not as uncomfortable as Susan thought. And then she asks who told him of the arrangement. He stares at the mayor's sister, Coral. She wrinkles her nose at this news a bit, as only a couple other people she thinks could have explained her situation more crudely. Like maybe Jonas or Rhea. Not exactly great company to be lumped in there with. She presses on, and since he understands her situation, that she can't return whatever he is feeling for her. She wants to know why he sought her out since he is uncomfortable. He jumps in and says it does make him uncomfortable because he can barely look at her and keep his head. She says that it probably is best not to look or talk to each other, and then asks why he sent her the flowers and how much trouble that, and then asks, did he know how much trouble that could have gotten her in with her aunt? If she knew about the note or that they were alone out here, and she looks around nervously to make sure that they're still alone. He reaches out and touches her shoulder, and she gives him a look that makes him withdraw his hand as if he was touching something hot. He says how he feels is not her fault. She can't help thinking the kiss didn't help. He again asks for her pardon and what he said when they were dancing, which she finally gives. I think it's like 3 or 4 times now asking that he's asked, and she, all right, you're forgiven. He says, thank you, Sai, and she says she hates that and to call her Susan, and he says, then call me Will.
And she said that in their first meeting, too.
Yes, she says thank you.
He called her Sai, and she's like, it makes me feel like an old woman.
Yes.
So I feel like that in our world, that's like calling someone like
ma'am.
Miss.
Ma'am.
Miss or ma'am.
Yeah.
Like Miss, I think, is even worse, because I feel like you only call like teachers that. So it's just like, it just makes you feel old.
I've always thought ma'am was the worst one.
I don't know. I think ma'am's pretty polite in general, but Miss or Mrs. though, I think that's where people are like, oh God, that's what you call teachers.
Don't do that. And so my note here: if you had told me any time before reading this part that we would see vulnerable young Roland, I'm talking about previous book Roland.
Yeah,
I would have laughed at you. It really does a lot to see what Roland was like, not just as a boy in training, but in love out on his own. It's such a big change for from the first 3 books that it just completely is rewriting the entire image of Roland that I have in my head.
Yeah.
And that's wild because you literally called him a Terminator earlier.
Yeah.
This is rewriting that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's insane for a character to have that done in the 4th book.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling someone recently, like they were talking about getting into the series, something. But I remember just straight up, I'll tell people right from the beginning, just know that the 4th book's a flashback, the entire book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care if people consider that a spoiler. I said, because the false expectations that I was just going to be able to breeze towards the tower in every book was upset by book 4, which is why I hated it. Whereas when I go back and reread it, knowing what's going to happen or whatever, the 4th book ended up becoming my favorite because it was the expectations were wrong. And it's like, so I love telling people right from the outset, hey, just know book 4 is a flashback, the entire thing.
Yeah.
Don't expect forward progress. But it's important because I love Roland. He's one of my favorite characters outside of course, Randall Flagg. Boo. And this book is the place that you can get to know him a lot because you are rewinding. This is the origin story, essentially. I mean, right? So Roland said, as he said, there's a lot of stories I could tell. I'll tell this one, and it could take the place of all those other stories to kind of tell you who I am.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't take note of it, but also when she, at the mention of Coral Thorin, she wrinkles her nose. That always makes me laugh because it reminds me of you. If I get you, see, you make that face. If you're not getting angry, but I get you with something, you do the face crunch up and you get the wrinkled nose. So that always makes me think of you.
Just admit it. It brings you joy. And I'm really sorry. I did not read your next note. I did not realize that I said it almost word for word about the Terminator thing with Roland.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, yeah. I said it's definitely wild, definitely a lot different than the Terminator with very little emotions and very, very, very small sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because there is a sense of humor starting to poke through in the last book. It was weird. I remember the first time he told a joke, and Eddie's like,
what the fuck?
He's like, did you just tell a joke?
Yeah.
So,
the whole world just record scratch,
which I love the record scratch in movies and stuff. It's one of my favorite, like, reoccurring jokes. It cracks me up. And then my other note here, we have seen a bit from Coral, but King lays a lot of track here by having Susan think that she is probably the worst person to tell of the arrangement apart from Jonas or the fucking witch. That speaks a lot about what we probably suspected with meeting her the first time.
Yeah.
She seemed rough around the edges. She seemed a little bit rude. She seemed like someone that would like try to maybe get a rise out of someone.
Yep.
You know those kind of assholes.
Oh, you.
How dare you?
Want me to tell the story about the first time we met again?
So I think King, it's the mark of a good writer that he was able to just lay that little bit in there, and it tells so much. It tells more than if we would have just spent an entire chapter with Coral. You know, so I just love that because it's just like you got to respect the craft that King has here. He's able to just like, here, let me just throw a little tiny sentence in there, and it like does more than a chapter would have to really, because Susan's gonna know her. It's a small town, everyone knows everyone. You know, so it's like she knows Coral, and it's just like, oh god, that's outside of freaking Jonas, which we already kind of know what he is, and then the fucking witch on the mountain. Like, those are the only two people worse than Coral. So that tells a lot about her. So
absolutely,
I do appreciate that from King.
That's a great way of instantly filing away. Okay, that's where she goes.
Yeah.
She's on that side of things.
Yeah.
So then Will asks her if she supports the affiliation. This catches her completely off guard. She says she expected them to count livestock, guns, boats, other stuff like that the affiliation could use, but not the supporters. He smiles at how she is using thee and thou, and she says that he wouldn't like it if it came from her aunt. She then says she is for the affiliation because her dad was. But she says if he asks if she is strong for the affiliation, then she would say no. And she gives a really logical explanation for this. They don't see them or deal with them much all the way out here. There's no train. There's no direct line and everything like that. They're all the way at the end, you know, on the edge of the sea. And
they
everything.
mentioned that when they were welcomed. I think not even the dinner party, but I think when they met the sheriff the first time, I think it was before the dinner party, and I think he said something about like 7 years ago was the last time, and like a gunslinger was in the area, and even then it was like a few towns over. So it's like this is remote. This isn't a place that we're getting a lot of Gilead, you know, senators or whatever the fuck it would be, right? Like delegations.
Gunslingers.
Yeah, or gunslingers. There's not delegations or gunslingers coming out to this town. You know, chances are you could probably ask most people in that town, they could tell you the exact time that the last one came, right?
Yeah.
That'd be one of those,
that's the stuff of legend.
Yeah,
that's
that'd be
a big deal.
Yeah, that'd be one of those legendary things where it's like, fucking, that gunslinger was here.
The gunslinger rode through in
43 years ago.
Yeah.
43 years ago this October is when the gunslinger guy, it would be one of those things they would all remember. So, yeah.
They reenacted in a little play. Will says that is how most of the town folks have responded as well. But it is weird, and this is where things start to get interesting, that when he asks for anything, he snaps his fingers and Kimber Reimer stands before him. Susan jokes. Kimber Reimer is the mayor's right-hand man. Chancellor. Yeah. So Susan jokes not to snap his fingers then and tries to smile, but the joke falls flat and Will presses on. He says the mayor and the closest men to the mayor rant and rave about the affiliation. What?
Oh, Hayden just says, I'm actually doing yard work whilst listening, and I had to stop to 1,000% confirm that Tad's source of joy in life is accosting others with horrid content and concepts and getting a rise in reaction out of them. From them, not limited to verbal abuse and conjuring vomit.
Yeah, that's Tad's joy. If Tad could only have that, he would survive.
Oh. So what you're saying is I'm like Pennywise then?
Yes. Evil.
Pennywise is a lovable and endearing character.
No, stop it. So Will says that the mayor and his closest men rant and rave about the affiliation. Can't get enough of them. They're the best. We love you guys and everything.
Yeah.
Also that in every ranch parlor, they are offered a drink. It's like the people want them to break their vow. He asks if that is strange. She says it is a little bit, but it could just be Hambry hospitality. As the vow out here makes people think the fella is just being kind of coy, not serious, you know?
Yeah.
Then he asks about the diehard support from the movers and shakers for the affiliation. She says that is a little bit queer. What is Will figuring out here? How much do we know as readers already? This is what I wanted to ask because I did miss the first few book clubs for this book. Is like
no, you missed a couple middle ones because you were there for the first one.
Oh, I was for the
because the Rhea stuff.
So yeah, after that I missed the dinner party and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, did we miss a lot where Will's like caught up with us that something's obviously wrong?
A lot of the dinner party, you saw a lot of stuff for sure. And so my answer here, we have seen enough to know that the top folks are tied to Farson and the Coffin Hunters are part of that.
Okay.
We know that the oil from Sitgo is part of it. What he is finding out is how exaggerated their support for the affiliation is. And it actually reminds me of a line from Silence of the Lambs, like the exaggerations of a bad liar.
Yeah.
Is the line that...
You overcompensate when you're lying. I did
Yeah.
that a lot as a kid
Yeah.
with my parents. It's like, oh, yeah, I was over at my friend's house, and I was doing this, and I was doing this, and I was doing this. And they're like, yeah, we already called. We knew you weren't over there. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, oh, I was over at my friend's house.
Yeah.
You always overcompensate.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay.
So yeah, that is definitely something that we know. But yeah, I think that the idea that they're basically exaggerating their love
Yeah.
and support, like it's a little suspicious.
Such a red flag.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then my next note, also the fact that they seem to want to get the kids drinking despite their story, because their story is that they were raising hell, getting drunk. They basically killed a thoroughbred horse by running it through a gopher hole, and it broke its leg and it had to be put down. All that is, and that's why they're here, is their penance. They're here to like make good, whatever. But as part of that, they couldn't be drinking. So the fact that they're all being offered drinks
constantly
is pretty suspicious.
Yeah.
And then the rest of my note, could that be to cast them out, basically telling their fathers that, hey, they're still drunk hellions and we won't have them here, or is it to make them less sharp by getting them all boozed up?
I think it's a yes. Either one they'll take, but I think getting them out of Mejis would be first priority, because apparently they have a ton of stuff they don't want them to see.
Yeah, that's the sense we're getting for sure.
Yeah, and I always get excited about the world building with Mejis. Finding out anything about the affiliation, the relationship is just awesome for me.
And yeah, indeed, yeah. Also, Baraki said in every book, it seems to me that King reveals that Roland understood a lot more of what was going on than he let on earlier in the story. Yeah, Roland's good at that.
That is apt. Absolutely.
But this time, I think he's catching on to things, but I really don't know that he's more in the know. I think we know more as readers than he does.
Okay.
And usually I think that may be the reverse, where Roland knows some stuff that we don't.
He's usually the one revealing stuff to us.
Yes.
It's like, oh, it's a speaking demon.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but King has let us in on a couple things that Roland hasn't seen.
Okay.
So we know more than he does. So we're like, you're on the right track, kid, but you got to get there quicker, because these people are very dangerous.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They're aligned with your enemy. So, yeah, that is something we definitely know.
So going on, Will asks if the mayor says anything when they are alone, or is that beyond what he can ask? Dude, the balls on this kid.
Yeah, don't ask that.
Like,
don't ask that.
She says she cares not, as someone recently said. She understands little of propriety. Throws her right back at him. She sees his downcast look and flush of embarrassment as she expected. And she knew girls who like to tease and flirt, and they would tease hard. But she had no taste for it and no desire to see her set her claws in him. When she went on, she spoke gently and said she isn't alone with him. She thinks of the time after the party where he groped her in the hall. She presses on and says, what does it matter? Wouldn't them being all helpful make the job easier? Will says, because something is wrong here. She asks, what is it? What do you mean? What's wrong? And he says he's going to trust her. She says she doesn't know if she wants his trust any more than his love. He says he has to trust someone and asks her to look down there. And what does she see? She says that she sees the drop. It's her favorite place in the world. It's the drop. He says, okay, well, what else do you see? She says she sees horses, of course. And he doesn't respond to the little dad joke, which makes you proud.
Yeah.
He says, right, horses, but is it the right number? He goes on to say that he should be able to trust her, as she's been seeing horses on the drop her whole life, and no one in the Horsemen's Association is better at saying. She asks if he trusts them, and he says, and this is a direct quote from the book, they've given us everything we've asked for, and they're as friendly as a dog under the dinner table. But no, I don't think I do. I just pause here because I'm like, smart of Roland to find someone who knows the answer that isn't connected to the Horsemen's Association directly, because very clearly, if someone is being warm and bubbly like that to you, but there is reason for them to not necessarily be warm and bubbly, they have something going on.
Yeah.
That's like a definite red flag. Like, oh,
yeah,
maybe I shouldn't trust these people.
Yeah, indeed. My note, true, but I also don't trust him in this. I think he is bringing her into his confidences so that she could be, so that he could be close to her and break down her walls of distrust a bit.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's just like, again, I was a 14-year-old boy once. I know the games he's playing.
I have to trust someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not you, random girl who I think is cute?
Yes. That.
And I just told that I'm in love with.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we see glimpses of the man Roland is going to become all through the book. This is a big one. He doesn't trust any of them because they are too nice. But also one of the ones I want to point out is that she makes a little pun. Horses of courses, which is a joke. And Roland doesn't react at all.
Yeah.
Nothing. Not a smile, not a little, yeah, okay. Seriously.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No, he just no sells it, moves on.
Nothing.
Just moves right on.
Yep.
I respect it.
You would. Speaking of moving on, no. She says that he would trust her though. He looks at her steadily and he says he has to trust someone. She says, why would he trust her though?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wrote that wrong. And he looks at her steadily and he says he has to trust someone, and that's what it comes down to, is that he has to ask someone, and he doesn't know who to trust, so he's choosing her. She looks down as if he had rebuked her. He reaches out gently, tips her chin up, and asks if it is the right number and to think carefully. And then I just took a quote here because I feel like this is like a turning point. This is like the end of an episode of a TV show. This is a dun-dun-dun moment. But now that he had brought it to her attention, she hardly needed to think about it at all. She had been aware of the change for some time, she supposed, but it had been gradual, easy to overlook. No, she said at last, it's not right. Too few or too many? Which? She paused for a moment, drew in breath, let it out in a long sigh. Too many. Far too many. Will Dearborn raised his clenched fist to shoulder height and gave them a single hard shake. His blue eyes blazed like the sparklights of which her granddad had told her. I knew it, he said. I knew it.
So Roland's fist bumping? Yeah, like what do you call that?
Huzzah!
Yeah, not fist bumping, like
not fist bumping,
but
yeah.
like I don't know what you call that, but like yeah, it's like that,
celebrating.
That's way more than I would expect from Roland as well. That's very 14-year-old Roland. I don't think in a million years, even if in the next chapter he showed up at the Dark Tower itself, I don't think he'd have that reaction.
Yeah.
So this is again, this pulls me out a tiny bit, not in a bad way, but more of a way of like, oh my God, this is Roland? Like,
who are you? What have you done with our Terminator?
Yeah, seriously. Where's the dude that massacred a whole town? This isn't it.
Back.
This isn't it.
This is literally two young adults talking about the number of horses in the area. And yet King makes it so suspenseful that I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see what happens next. Like, even though I know what happens, I'm still like, oh.
Yeah.
It's like watching a murder mystery again for the second or third time.
Yeah.
You still know who the killer is.
Yeah.
Like, I watched Knives Out a couple weeks ago, and I'm just like,
yeah.
oh, like, good story writers can do that to you.
Such a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
Or Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah. You know what's going to happen when she knocks on that door.
I guess even the first time you watch it, though, you don't know. Then suddenly he answers the door and it's her. It's like... You're like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Your jaw drops. Your tongue rolls out.
Yeah. My last note for this subchapter, because it is done. Her defenses are coming down. So much for being careful.
Yeah.
Like, that did not last long.
Yeah.
That one meeting, she was right in her note. She knew not to meet him, and yet this one meeting, look what's happened.
Yeah. And then my last note. It is a revelation for us too. Too many horses speaks to a much wider conspiracy than just the top dogs. Every horseman now has to be involved to one extent or another. Playing with abandoned, long forgotten oil derricks is one thing, but to have one of the two lifebloods of this town, that is like the Holocaust in our world. It takes a lot of people either being involved or supporting it or being willfully ignorant about it.
Yeah.
This went from being like 3 or 4 guys that are at the top of this town to like now maybe half the town potentially involved.
Or all of them.
Yeah.
Roland's saying he can't trust a single person in the Horsemen's Association, which, like you said, is the bigger half of the town.
Yeah, they got horses and the fishermen.
So
it's
and the fishermen have been said it's a smaller portion. The drop, the horses, that is huge for this town.
So you're
and
talking a
everything.
majority of the town now.
Yep.
Like, you've got to immediately not trust. I mean, Roland's discovering it too. I mean, I think Roland's general thought process, because of how Court taught him, would be not to trust anyone that.
Right.
You just probably not trust anyone. Period.
Mm-hmm.
But now he knows for a fact that, like, these people are a large portion of these people are involved in some shit here.
Right.
So that's a big revelation for all of us. And then Baraki says all Roland had to do was take her walls down and melt her heart, was to trust her and infer that she was smart. Yeah, I mean, there was, yeah. There, I don't want to call it manipulation. That sounds too negative, because it is the lovers thing, right? That's what people do in courting is I don't know, acceptable manipulation, I guess.
Oh, you're so handsome.
Yeah, there's just all that kind of shit, holding doors in the car, like the dude pays for dinner, like there's, pulling the seat out, like there's all the manipulation. I mean, you could like wave it away and say that's not manipulation, but come on, we all know.
Oh yeah,
that's what it all is. How many people that are like married 50 years or 40 years or 30 years are still pulling their wife's chair back? And
my wife told me to stop. She got annoyed with it. She's like, I got it. I got it. It's fine. You don't have to try to impress me anymore. I got it.
All right. So moving over to subchapter 8, and this is the end of our section for today. This is not the shortest chapter. It's a little bit shorter than what Peter just covered, though.
But we do have spoiler stuff still to talk about as
yeah,
well.
we do have a couple spoiler things. So we asked her how many horses were down there, and she asked if she meant below them or the entire drop, and he said just below them. She looked carefully, not really to count, because that only confuses you. She saw 4 good-sized groups of 20 and perhaps 9 smaller groups, some solo. And while she was looking, he said maybe 160, and she agreed that is exactly the number that she was thinking. And he asked how much of the drop that they were looking at, a quarter or a third, and she told him that it was much less, and she thinks that he knows that it's less than that. And she said maybe it's a sixth of the drop. And he says that if there were 160 horses on the sixth that came to, and then he starts to calculate, and she waited for him to come up with the number 960, because she's obviously better at math than he is. And when he did, she nodded. Rusher nudged him a bit, and it made Rusher nudged Roland in the back. It made Susan stifle a laugh. He then asked how many more horses were in stabled or training or working, and she said 1 for every 3 down there at a guess. And he said that they're likely talking about 1,200 head of all threaded stock, no muties. And she agreed. There were virtually no muties in Mejis or any of the outer baronies for that matter. She asked if they were true breeding more than 3 out of 5, and she said they bred them all. He asked if 1/5 of those were born mutants, and she was shocked and said who told him that. And he said that Renfrew said that and Renfrew had told him that, and that Renfrew had also said that there were 570 head of threaded stock in Mejis. She was exacerbated and said that is crazy, and then if her dad was here, and then Roland cut her off and said that he isn't here, he is dead. She said that her dad died in an accident, and his horse rolled on him, and that Fran Langell had said that the horse saw a snake in the grass. He asked, or she says Fran. And then he asked if she meant Fran Langell, and she says yes, but then began to rant about how close that that Fran Langell had been to her father, and that she refused to believe that he had lied about it, let alone had anything to do with it. So Roland's not even saying much here. Mm-hmm. He's just like saying like small things, and she's taking that to the next extent, right? To basically bring up the suspicion of, was your dad's death an accident?
He's almost doing the raised eyebrows thing where, the person's talking and they're just, the other person's just listening and just doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
No, I swear. No, do you really think that's what happened? The other person doesn't say a goddamn word.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing right here.
Yeah. But she looked doubtfully down at the horses below. Will told her that Stockworth discussed horses with Fran over a glass of spring water after beer had been offered and refused. When Richard asked about threaded stock, Fran had said that they had 400, and Susan had said that was insane. So we're talking about 1,200. One person said 590. One person said 400. So either way,
that's a big difference for horses.
Yeah, you've got some serious.
You go up to a rancher, and I know I'm not a ranch expert. I've lived in a city my entire life. But I've seen enough shows that if you go up to a rancher and you ask them, hey, how many head are in your herd? They're going to fucking know down to the exact number
Yeah.
how many there are, because that's their livelihood.
Yeah.
They live off of this.
Yeah. And in this world that we're reading into, those horses are way more valuable than they are in our world.
We covered that,
You know.
that wasting paper and wasting livestock
But it's like they don't
are two of the biggest mortal sins kind of thing.
Yeah, for the most part, homicidal trains aside, there aren't, motored vehicles
Yes.
in this world. So horses are the extent of transportation for the most part.
But the motorized train would exist in this world.
It
This
does,
is
but
in the past.
I would say that's the exception that proves
Yes.
the rule. There's not a lot of
Well,
transportation. that we see
she
in
even
this world.
mentions it that her granddad told her about electric lights. That means that we're 2 generations removed from
Yeah.
electricity.
Yeah, exactly. So then my notes here. So we get another piece of the puzzle. We know they have something going with Sitgo and oil, but it seems they also have a lot of horses, and that and they don't want the affiliation to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's ties right in with my note. One of the biggest points I took away from this is that they're lying to the boys. That's a huge red flag when they lie right to your face about how many are born mutie and total counts. Those are big lies.
Yeah, because in this world, born mutie would be the perfect way to basically money launder, right?
Yeah.
It's like, cool, you got five horses born this year. We'll tell the government that you have to pay taxes to. I know we're not going to get to tax collectors in this book.
Yeah.
But there is one of the books that we get a tax collector
This is
involved. Then you tell them, well, 3 of those 5 were born mutie.
And
So
we
I
had
only,
to kill 'em.
I only have 2.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
That's
So-
what you have to charge me for is the 2.
Yeah, and I know these kids aren't counting for tax collection purposes, but
They kind of are.
Yeah,
They're auditing what is
Yeah.
available for the war versus Farson, right?
You've got to imagine that's got to be in their minds, though, that these aren't tax collectors per se, but what these kids say, record, and bring to their fathers that are highfalutin people in the inner baronies.
They're gunslingers.
Like that. Yeah, they're
fucking gunslingers.
yeah, they're that's gonna have some repercussions on things.
This is like lying to a assigned Senate committee.
Yeah.
Like you run a manufacturer. Let's take America during World War II. Okay, you're making bomber parts or tank parts or whatever, and a senator's appointed subcommittee shows up to be like, hey, you're saying you can only do X amount, but I'm seeing that you're doing Y amount. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
You don't lie to that person because he goes back and he tells the senator, and the senator doesn't like your answer, and he pulls your fucking funding.
Yeah.
If Gilead doesn't like your answer, they're going to send those gunslingers to come take your fucking horses.
Yeah. Exactly.
And kill you because you're doing bad. You're a
Yeah.
traitor, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Maybe give you a little finger wagging.
A little finger wagging as you swing from the gallows.
Going back to when we were talking about the deceptions, Hayden says it's called wooing, and then he gives us a laughing emoji, and it says Tad's favorite word when he stands up too quick.
The amount of times I've heard you go, ooh. Oh, I got a spinning circle.
Hayden's heard that quite a few times, but usually his is more to do with what I've ingested more so than just standing up too quickly.
This is true.
My next note, also interesting, there are no muties in Mejis or any of the outer baronies, according to Susan.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because this is a lot longer ago and closer to whatever cataclysm happened to this world. It makes sense that some place, but it also does make sense that some places would be worse than others.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're completely done with muties in this part of the world is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's their livelihood. They've probably done some even selective breeding to try to, cleanse the bloodlines of the mutations quicker than other areas. Because again, that's their bread and butter, right? But it's like we saw in the future, in Roland and Susanna and Eddie's time, like the mutated bees and stuff. And Roland talked about how, like, the world was healing itself of whatever had happened, but there still was mutations. So the fact that you're now rewinding however the fuck far back, and she's saying this entire region, we don't have mutie horses. Like, that's...
And they're closer to Gilead than Lud was.
Yeah.
Which is where we saw the mutie bees.
Yeah.
Is outside of Lud.
Yeah, so
in
that's...
between River Crossing and Lud, right?
So I have to imagine it isn't that they don't get mutie other animals, it's that horses, they've probably done a lot of selective breeding and a lot of... They've applied a craft to get rid of the mutations out of the horse.
Well, at the same time, you also have to take into account that they're fishing. Well, okay, so they're not saying anything about mutant fish or anything like that. So is Mejis just healthier than the rest of the world?
Could be. I mean, ultimately, if Eddie was right and that was atomic bombs or nuclear bombs, maybe
What if
this
the
is
fallout went the other way?
yeah, this is an area that maybe wasn't hit as hard or whatever.
Yeah.
So
This is Nevada, whereas California is fucked.
it could be that, but also it could be, in my mind, the only thing we know for sure right now is they don't have mutated horses. Doesn't mean they don't have mutated squirrels or fish, even. Who knows?
Right.
So it could just very well be that they're so good at what they do that they've purified the bloodlines to avoid mutation.
I mean, they do have a couple mutants. You got Cordelia and Rhea here, so.
Now suddenly Susan is jumping to conclusions and defending that her dad was not murdered, and it certainly makes us as readers wonder because she is clearly in denial. But the fact that she jumps to that idea so quickly is very interesting. Also, we find that that her dad was for the affiliation.
Right. So he's for the affiliation.
First time reading, what were you at this point? Are you like 100% that he was murdered?
Oh yeah.
The first time reading?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think even the first time, I think when she was in Rhea's hut in the first thing, and she talked about her dad being killed, I remember just kind of wondering, like...
Oh, was it under suspicious circumstances?
Yeah, I don't know why. There was no, like, proof at the time, but by the time I got here, I'm like, oh yeah. He was absolutely fucking murdered. Like,
yeah, and my note here ties in with this is one of those situations where, well, they lied to us about this. What else are they lying about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's where Susan's coming from, is like, oh, they're lying to them about how many horses there are? Well, what else are they lying to people about?
Yeah. And that's why I said these people are telling them 400 to 600 horses when napkin math alone is telling them it's probably closer to 1,200.
Yeah.
So this isn't good.
No.
You're talking about either a quarter or a third of what's real or half of what's real.
Right.
So that's nuts.
That is a definite red flag there.
Yes. Then going on, he told her they know the boys had barely gotten started on counting, and that they were starting on the docks with the fisher folk and probably figuring the boys had a month on that side before they concerned themselves with the horses. He mentioned that the general attitude that they can't get put, or let's see, he mentioned that the general attitude they get from the town is something he couldn't really put words to because he's not good with words. But Richard, which we know as Cuthbert, called genial contempt, which that's an interesting turn of phrase.
Richard is Alan. Arthur is Cuthbert.
Is it?
Yeah, because Sheemie makes a comment in one of my subchapters about Arthur's bird skull.
Oh, seems like Cuthbert would be the one better with words. To me, he seems like the chatty type.
Oh, what are you trying to say?
And then he said they leave the horses out in front of their eyes because they don't think the boys will know what they are seeing or won't believe what they are seeing. He then says that that he is glad he found her out here, and she thinks why so I can give you a count of the horses, or is there another reason? So she's got her guard up a little bit. She said that he will get around to counting horses. That they will get around to counting horses eventually, as they must be one of the affiliation's greatest needs. He gave her an odd look, like she missed the obvious, and she asked what, and which you just mentioned earlier about giving that look to people. And he said maybe the extra horses would be gone before they got around to counting this side of Mejis. She asked where they would have gone, and he didn't know, but he didn't like this and asked her to keep it between them. She nodded and thought that she'd be insane to tell anyone that she had been out here unchaperoned with him.
Yeah.
He said it might turn out to be nothing, but if it didn't, knowing could be dangerous, which led her to be again to thinking about her dad. Fran had told her that Anna had told her and Aunt Cord that her dad had been thrown from his horse and killed. But he had also told Will and his friends that they had 400 horses in Mejis, and she knew that was a lie.
Again, they lied once. What else are they lying about?
Yeah, indeed.
The very cop thinking here for her.
Yeah.
Oh, you lied about that one thing. Oh, what else you lied about, buddy?
Yeah, exactly. And also, there's like an element of children that are just trusting, right? Mm-hmm. And she's 16. This isn't the
younger
same.
When her dad dies too.
Yeah, that was a long time. That was years ago. It was a number. Oh, God, was it over a decade? Because I remember us saying like, God. I remember during the book.
I didn't realize that she was that little.
Yeah, she was really young when her dad died. So it's like it's been a while, but it's like there's an element of kids that they believe everything until something happens that makes them not believe. You know, and like that's what is it? Jake said. You know, it's easy to lie to kids. You know, or it's easy to trick and emotionally manipulate kids because they believe everything. So,
well, they're supposed to. That's the thing.
That's the nature of it. So once you pierce that veil, though, now that's pierced for her. Like now she knows like there's bald-faced lies going on. So it's going to make her question a lot of things. So they're counting on the other side of the town, and they're figured to be there for a while, giving them time to finagle things. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What the bigger they, sir? We are they. Also interesting that the horses are left out in plain sight. You'd think that after the showdown, people would stop underestimating these boys, but then I would assume that the horse thing is not directly under the purview of Jonas. Do you think that's fair to assume? Like, because he's so focused on the Sitgo stuff, the higher political thing, and I kind of wonder if like the Horsemen's Association has a little bit more power. Kind of like there's always that power, but like not behind the throne, but like kind of like think of like Germany during World War II. Yes, there was a dictatorship, but the Wehrmacht was like had a lot of power to oppose Hitler and say fuck you, we're not doing that. You know,
and it wasn't until Hitler removed a lot of those leaders and had them court-martialed or brought up on false charges and stuff like that.
Eventually
he broke it down and became an absolute dictator. We don't have that here.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me wonder if that's what like it comes down to is like Jonas has his fingers in a lot of pies, but the Horsemen's Association is strong enough to kind of hold him out a little bit. So I wonder if like
Jonas isn't the leader. That's the thing is like he's not using your example.
Yeah.
He's not Hitler. He's Goering.
Yeah.
He's down a couple pegs, kind of thing. So like Jonas isn't even the tip top, so this affiliation can go to the mayor, and the mayor can override Jonas because the mayor is in charge.
Because I kind of think that if Jonas were in charge of the horses, this would be treated differently.
So
because I think once the showdown happened, I think Jonas is never going to underestimate these kids again.
No.
So the fact that these horses aren't now being like hidden away in some way makes me think that Jonas, this is outside of his purview.
Well, here's the thing. This bugged me for the longest time, but then on one of the read-throughs I had just recently, I had a thought. Okay, so say you're going to hide over 500 horses. Where?
I mean, you could vacate him out of the entire place and move him into like towards Farson. Like,
you don't think that the boys would notice that? They live on the drop.
Yeah,
They're out there at the Bar Cave Ranch and everything like that.
You'd move him.
If you move a herd of 500 horses, people notice. Also, back to the small town.
You do it smaller bits at it. You wouldn't do it all 500 at once.
It would be noticed. That's the thing is that I'm saying is that this is a small town. Hey, where's Fran? Oh, he's been running 30 horses out of town every single day for the last month.
Yeah, they're not going to say
and Richard's sitting there going,
they're not going to say that around the kids, though.
Why not?
Because the whole
they don't know better.
Yeah, the whole town.
No, the Horsemen's Affiliation is in on it. Do you think that Bob next door to Susan is? He's a fisherman.
But the drop's also outside of town. Remember, Susan lives near the drop, and they're always talked about being out of town.
On the outskirts
so
of
it's
town.
like, I think you could easily know that the boys are going to spend about a month on the docks, and you just take divide up small bits that you take out during that month.
Again, but where do you put them?
You could just take them out to freaking the next town over if you had to.
I don't think that there is a next town over. I think it's a ways down the road and everything like that, which means you have to have people out there taking care of the horses because they're not on the drop. They're not safe and secure. Remember, they want these horses.
Yeah.
So you have to keep track of them. If you're going to take that many horses and put them somewhere, you have to have people watching them. If those people are missing, the boys will figure that out. Jonas is not going to underestimate them. Maybe he's hoping they overlook it. And I think, to your point, I think the Horsemen's Association should have shut the fuck up. Because be more vague in your answers.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. We haven't taken a total head count in 15 years here, sir.
It's like the lawyer thing, right?
Yeah.
The best thing a lawyer will tell you is if you're ever on the stand and another lawyer asks you if you know what time it is, what do you say?
I'm not sure.
No, you say yes or no.
Yes.
So yes, I know what time it is.
Yes,
but you don't tell them what time it is.
Yes.
Because that's the problem is when you start answering questions that you weren't asked.
Yeah.
That's where you get in trouble. I've heard 100 lawyers that have said, even on the YouTubes, where they're like, I'm a real lawyer. Here's some things I'll tell you. And they always say, if a lawyer asks you what time it is, or if you know what time it is, you say yes or no. And that's the end of your answer.
Yeah, see, that's where I think the Jonas thing that you were saying comes into effect, is that if Jonas is in charge, he's going to tell them to shut the fuck up. You don't tell these boys shit. If they have questions, they need to go to this person. And he picks one person, and he drills into that person what to say.
Yeah.
That's what Jonas would have done if he's in charge. So I 100% agree with you. I think that that's the case.
I don't think he's...
But I think that the affiliation just goes, well, they're not going to notice. They're not going to know how many horses we're supposed to have. But then these guys at the boys are smart enough to ask, a lot of fucking horses here. How many you guys got?
Yeah.
They should have played dumb, and they didn't. And they opened their mouth, and now they put their foot in it.
Yeah, because I also ultimately think all these horses aren't from this area either. I think there's a lot of
consolidating?
places that are gathering these horses to then move them to Farson with the Sitgo stuff, which we've already been told
Yeah.
by Jonas that he's gonna at some point they're gonna move this oil to.
Using Mejis, which is a horse town, to launder
Yeah.
the horses that
Exactly.
they're bringing in.
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, it feels to me like maybe you could like slowly move some of them somewhere else, maybe back where they came from, because I just don't think you'd be dumb enough to underestimate these.
I don't know if they have time.
but-
That's the thing.
But here's the thing. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that Jonas has anything to do with the horses. I think that's that's above his pay grade. The Horsemen's Association, they may answer to him in a slight way. Maybe the head of the Horsemen's Association is aligned with him, but
they're like the same level.
but there's still that element
Yeah.
of, though, if you got the head guy, how many big ranchers, their entire livelihood is those horses. If you said like, hey, I'm going to move all your horses out of town, what does that guy say? He said,
Fuck
fuck you.
you.
You're not doing
Yeah.
that. So like, I think kind of maybe Jonas doesn't have the full say over it, would be my
Yeah.
guess. I would say even the mayor doesn't. I would say the Horsemen's Association probably holds a lot of weight in this town.
Brocky says the drop is a lot bigger than you might be thinking of. They can move them around the drop away from where the affiliation brats are. I'm just saying,
It's like the
you move 500 horses, anyone in the area is going to notice, even if they're in town. That's a lot of horses
Yeah.
moving.
My last note, Susan is further wondering if her father's death was not an accident. I think we as readers pretty much assume right away that he was murdered. Like,
I mean,
there's-
we already
yeah,
kind of
it's-
talked about this. Yeah, absolutely.
There's no
as
doubt.
soon as a character questions it, you start questioning it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and we know enough behind the scenes of what King has shown us from the other side, where it's just like, and then her saying that her dad was for the affiliation,
Yeah.
potentially like hard for the affiliation.
Well, obviously,
Well, then
you know.
that's the guy you're going to have to remove. Like,
Yeah.
he's the head of the Horsemen's Association. He's super pro affiliation. Like, everything's lining up to where this guy's got to go.
Yeah, he's got to go.
Yeah, he's got to take a motorcade through Dallas.
Oh God.
I just calling it like I sees it. So he turned back to his horse, and while she wanted more time with him, she knew it was probably not best that they not stay together for too long. Be best not to stay because they had been together for too long already. There was no reason to think that anyone would ride up on them, but that thought didn't come for her, but made her more nervous, which is funny. When you're like, nobody should stumble on us, but then that makes you more nervous rather than comforting.
Right.
He straightened his tack, and Rusher made a noise as if to say it's about time we got going. Will turned back to her, and she felt his gaze and felt Ka would be too strong to deny. And he said he had one more thing to say and did not like having to go back to where they started, but he had to. And she said that no, that is done. He told her that he had said that he loved her and was jealous, and she was alarmed to see tears in his eyes. And he said there was more. She told him that she didn't want, she told him she didn't want to, and turned to her own horse. And he turned her back around. She now knew that she could not stand against him for long. She wanted him so bad it ached. And if she had missed, she missed her father, and she agreed that she did. He said that he missed his mother the same way. She asked if his mother was dead, and he said no, and tried to explain it, but got frustrated and said, "How can he explain it when he doesn't even like to think about it?" He says that she did die to him. Susan said that was terrible. He continued to say the last time he saw her, she looked at him in a way that would haunt him to his grave. A mixture of shame, love, and hope all wrapped into one. Shame for what he had seen. Hope that he'd understand and forgive. And then he mentioned the party that Reimer had told a joke and she had laughed. She says that she only would have laughed for appearances because she didn't like him. He was a schemer and a conniver. There's another thing to note there about Kimba Reimer. Because again, who would know better than her that's been in this town her whole life?
Yeah.
He said they all laughed and looked down, and he looked down at the end of the bar and saw Olive Thorin, and for a moment he thought he was seeing his mother because she looked the same way. She cried. Susan cried for him to stop and said she couldn't listen to him talk about her. She began to sob and said that she was ashamed and she had forgotten the face of her father and thought that she might never find it again. And then he kissed her. At first, she let herself be kissed, but soon she was kissing back almost furiously. So, there it goes.
And we're off.
Yeah, we're. So a lot of big emotions here for both of them, for sure. And that last bit was that was a lot.
Yeah. you could cut the tension with a knife.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot flying around here with these emotions and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Hayden says, given the value of horses, there would be a big a version of the in this town to the Godfather film too. Oh, indeed. So then these moments with Roland are good because it's so often I can lose the fact that he's just a child here. It's just so easy to just kind of like blend the three Rolands we've seen in the three previous books. Not three Rolands, but the one Roland we've seen in those last three books. It's easy to sometimes like blur and just think it's that Roland still. So to kind of be reminded of like, this is still a kid. Again, we just heard her seeing that he had tears in his eyes. And if I was to go back to you in book 1 and say at some point we're going to see Roland with tears in his eyes, would that be something you'd believe? I mean, even when we saw it in book 3, because he was crying because of the mind splitting stuff. Even then, Eddie was shocked, Susanna was shocked, we were shocked because Roland's mind was splitting and he was basically in torment. So definitely not something we were used to seeing from Roland. I think I'm also so used to Roland, from the first 3 books that it's just kind of a kick in the face every once in a while when you're reminded that, oh God, yeah, this is a young 14-year-old Roland.
Yeah.
Then all these big feelings culminating in some passionate kisses between the two.
Mm-hmm. My only note here. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's
a good way to sum that up. It's just a big uh-oh.
Yeah, because that's kind of what we suspected with the first chapter when they met on the road, that we assumed this might be a Romeo and Juliet type thing.
Yeah.
But then it kind of got rough there for a bit, so it kind of made me wonder if we were moving away from that. But now, with everything we're seeing here, I kind of think that we're back to that worry again.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and...
Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead.
All right, so that is moving us over to the spoiler section. If you have not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, now is the time to peace out. Check back with us after you've read all the books. But let's go ahead and dive in. We got a little bit, got a couple minutes. We can hit these up real quick. So what do you got?
So I have one little note here, one little spoiler thing to talk about is that Sheemie notices the bird skull and that Cuthbert talks to it and everything, kind of drawing attention to it again.
Yeah.
This is not the first time. Really good foreshadowing by King to bring that the bird skull is going to play a part here.
Yeah, and also that other people are noticing.
Yes.
Because, again, Sheemie is mentally challenged. If he locks
right,
onto it,
exactly.
everyone in the fucking town's going to know, like, that fucking idiot with his bird skull.
Uh-huh.
So.
And we've had a couple other people mention that he's got the lookout and everything like that. So just a little bit of good foreshadowing by King. We mentioned foreshadowing with a couple other things throughout the episode.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was just like, I got to call this one out because that's not one that I saw coming.
Yeah.
Like the dad being murdered. Like that's called out right at, like you mentioned it with Rhea.
Yeah.
That was kind of foreshadowed like, okay, is that going to be something? Is this going to be something? Is this going to be something?
Yeah.
And everything. But the bird skull, like right from the beginning, I never saw it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on, in the chat too. Mike popped in. Hi, I'll just finish dinner. I'll see you all. Geekery abides.
Awesome.
See you then. David said, I wonder if he has a middle name, Roland. Yeah, I don't know. Roland Stephen Deshane, maybe?
There we go.
Would be my guess. And then David also said the gunslinger is the only person in the world who goes from talking about his mom to let's make out. That is awkward. And then Hayden said, bye, gents. Great episode. Thank you, Hayden. Thanks for joining.
Bears.
So in one of my notes in the spoiler section, I think again it's a worthy question to whether Rhea truly deserves to win the most hated character over Cordelia. I feel like if we had this had that last round of voting again after debating it a bit, I think the vote might very well go the other way because as Susan said in my note from the first subchapter of this episode, Cordelia is not an ogre or a witch. So for everything we see from her isn't so much it's so much worse because she's not a witch. Right? Like Rhea should be nasty. She's a witch for God's sake. Mm-hmm. But Cordelia is not. She's a normal human being.
Real life monsters are worse than story monsters.
Exactly. The Mrs. Carmody is worse than the fucking creatures outside the thing. And ultimately what it comes down to is Cordelia is more human and also has way more reason to be kind and care for Susan. So the fact that she doesn't, I feel like it makes her worse, to be honest. Like, I get it. I think I'm sure I voted for Rhea back in that. But like, if I really had thought about that one, and I think if we ever did like a Cordelia Rhea summit and actually debated it and then had a vote at the end of it, I kind of think that Cordelia would have a good chance of winning. I really do.
I think the big thing here is that I think you're right. If we stop here and do a recount, it could go to Cordelia. But you do have to remember that Rhea's worst is still yet to come.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that Rhea does later, she's the reason Susan dies. Not Cordelia. Cordelia was going to let her go. Cordelia was like, that bitch, fine, I'm writing you off. Rhea's the one that's like, nah, Charyu tree. But then, the cherry on top, she tricks Roland into killing his own goddamn mother.
Yeah, there's that too.
I mean, dude.
Yeah.
You when you get to that, that's the thing. That's the sucker punch in my gut every time I read this book, because Susan Charyu Tree is always in my mind,
and it's all because of a snake.
Yeah,
like
Ermot, my precious Ermot.
I mean, Ermot was done dirty, so let's.
No, he wasn't. He tried to bite them. He deserved everything that he got. Fucking little two-headed snake. But no, like. That's always, like I was saying, that's always the sucker punch that comes later in this book. Is like, I'm reeling from Susan. I'm reeling from the loss of Roland's first love and finding out what he went through. And he chose the tower over her. And oh my God, that's such a big revelation.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Rhea fucking tricks him into gunning down his own mother.
Yeah. No, I can see why she went. I'm not even saying that like it's guaranteed, Cordelia. I'm just saying that I think if you actually made an argument and had a fresh vote between those two, I think there's a chance that Cordelia could win. Is all I'm saying.
I think you're 100% right that given the right lawyer, someone could argue her to the top of the summit.
She and the fact that we have both the two worst characters in this fucking book, for Christ's sake.
Introduced and only in this book entirely.
So then my last note, also how good King is. Yes, in Grimm's fairy tales and whatnot, you get evil step parents or whatever, but more often than not, when there's a sole surviving family member, usually that family member ends up having a selfless love and protection of the kid in the story that they're responsible for. So for King to leave only her and yet to have her be so fucking heinously terrible is masterful writing, because it feels too terrible to be fiction and it makes it feel way more real. I don't know if that totally belonged in the spoiler section, but it just felt.
I feel like it's a little bit more 50-50 with the person caring for who's left. Sometimes they're assholes. I mean, Cinderella.
That kind of gets into like the Grimm's fairy tale a bit though, where you have some of those like old things that like whatever that happens, but usually it's like a step parent too, and the parent's still complicit.
Yeah.
But it's like when like both parents are dead, and then like Aunt May has to take care of the kid, or
you're
so often.
An example would be Nani and Lilo and Stitch is an older sister, and she's looking out for her sister.
Yeah, it's all over the place. I mean, we just saw it in The Last of Us. Like someone that's a stranger is protecting this kid. I mean, there's the fucking Adam Sandler movie where he takes the kid that is because his friend's out of town or whatever,
Big Daddy,
and takes care. Like just throughout general pop culture, the person ends up being a really good person and like does the right thing.
Are you saying Adam Sandler's a good person?
But here it's just she is the exact opposite, and she's just
she's the worst.
She's the worst.
She makes the stepmother in Cinderella look like a goddamn queen.
Yeah. But that's all I got. So let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff real quick. I know we went a tiny bit over, a couple minutes. It's all good though. We had a lot to cover.
Brocky says he's always hated Cordelia worse.
Yeah, and then David said, so King is going to die someday. That being said, there's going to come a time where we'll be able to say that was the last foreshadowing Stephen King ever did. And I will say, even when he dies, I have a feeling there's going to be a trunk of things that is going to be discovered by his loved ones, and I think King's going to be published long after his death.
I hope so.
I really do. But ultimately, yes, though, truthfully, in timeline, his last published work will probably be one where you can actually say, last time Stephen King foreshadowed something, because, yes, it is a Stephen King classic. That also does remind me, we're on the eve of the next Stephen King book, too. I meant to mention that in the announcement or in the intro, but I forgot. But, yes, we only a few days removed from the new Stephen King.
Yeah.
Can't wait. So on the closing stuff, though, if you want to subscribe to us, you can do it on any podcasting delivery of your choice. You can stream us on Spotify, Audible, Amazon, Prime, Music, whatever, or Stitcher, any of those places. If you want to live stream the show over at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. If you want to find the show notes, darktowerpalaver.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the best ways to do that.
You can email us. It's show@darktowerpalaver.com. Our Twitter is @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. Our Blue Sky account is at darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. Our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And check out our merchandise at tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Yes, indeed. And we will sign off. And again, we are on schedule now, so our next episode's in a fortnight. We'll be doing a roundtable.
Yep.
So check us out then. And until then, we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
Boy.
All right, everyone in the chat, thank y'all for joining. Thanks for being part of the conversation. It's always wonderful. You guys are awesome. And this was a fun episode.
That was a great book club.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff.
I feel really good about that one. That one went really well.
That was good. So thank y'all for joining. And if you're joining us for Geekery Bites, we'll see you over there. If not, see you in a fortnight. See you guys.
Bye.